Chapter 18, 1 Year On. Chapter 18, 1 Year On. The spirit monkey suddenly executed such a ferocious sanguine ape fist seal. Suzimo was taken aback. Suzimo was suddenly enlightened on the gist of this style. Slightly distracted, he was hit right in the face by the spirit monkey's punch. The blow was severe. Suzimo was caught off guard. He was flung out and he bumped onto the stone walls in the cave, causing a huge dent on it. Dense cracks started to appear around the stone wall. Suzimo was dazed by the hit. At one moment, this monkey was laughing in such a carefree manner. In the next moment, he turned hostile and attacked. It was completely illogical. In fact, although the spirit monkey was intelligent and psychic, it did not understand the way humans interacted with one another. Hence, it was not influenced by the fighting and scheming as well as deceiving and blackmailing means in the mortal world. In the forest, the only communication between the demon clan was combat. The spirit monkey was simple and innocent. It retained the most primitive instinct of survival. It would fight or smile when it felt like it. He saved Suzimo only because of its enmity with the wolves. He completely did not care whether Suzimo was human or demon. When it released its punch, the spirit monkey had not even thought of retracting it. If Suzimo had not cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and consumed the scarlet flame fruit, attained initial success with body tempering and tendons transformation, this sanguine ape fist seal style would most probably make him half dead. Suzimo touched the blood flowing out of his nostrils. His face darkened as he said, "Damn monkey, do you wish to fight?" "Whoa wow." The spirit monkey was full of disdain. He curled his fingers at Suzimo and provoked the latter, chattering continuously. Without a word, Suzimo got up and released the plow heaven stride. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before the spirit monkey, turned his palm in the posture of rupturing the ground and landed it. Whoa! The spirit monkey shivered all over, seemingly shocked by the prowess of the plow heaven stride combined with the ground-rupturing palm. The spirit monkey seemed to have sensed the powers of the ground-rupturing palm. Hence, it did not continue with the fight. It tiptoed and retreated with lightning speed and agility. It was an empty hit, but Suzimo did not take it to heart. He followed on closely. After 6 months of life and death experiences, Suzimo had not only cultivated spirit perception but also mastered close combat ability and various kinds of fighting techniques. Suzimo followed on closely, clenching both fists below his belly. Knuckles protruded, and it was as if a pair of horns was piercing towards the chest of the spirit monkey. At the sight of this, the spirit monkey did not retreat. It attacked instead. Its body curled, one knee seemingly. At the same time that he dodged the bovine's moongazing, both of its palms seemed to be holding onto a fruit and lifting it up. Sanguine ape fruit offering. When the spirit monkey executed this style, Suzimo could not sense the slightest bit of murderous intent. The posture of sanguine ape fruit offering looked like someone kneeling on one knee and paying respects obediently. However, for some unknown reason, Suzimo suddenly felt his scalp blistering and also goosebumps breaking out all over his body. The spirit perception that he cultivated told him that a huge killing move was concealed in this style. Suzimo closed his eyes and retreated rapidly. At the same time, he paid attention to the spirit monkey's next moves. Pang! 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 The initial curl of the spirit monkey's body suddenly bounced open upon reaching right before Suzimo. The large tendons in its body were pulsating, sounds of the bowstring ran. It was suddenly releasing and gushing with murderous intent. Thoughts flashed across Suzimo's mind. He had faintly grasped the crux of the sanguine ape fruit offering. On one hand, when his large tendons contracted and suddenly stretched, it would release greater powers. On the other hand, sanguine ape fist seal first displayed weakness and restrained the murderous intent, followed by a counterattack. Apes loved peach and fruits most, but it offered the fruit at this point in time. Something was amiss. When it offered the fruit, it was evident that the ape already had a murderous intent. Bang! 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 Suzimo and the spirit monkey sparred constantly in the cave, feet curling and colliding, palms moving like saber. With Suzimo's combat techniques, he could receive and release blows freely. He was forceful and resilient, swift, and flexible. He carried an aura that could block the heaven and split the earth. Shortly after, he subdued the spirit monkey. However, it was not easy for Suzimo to defeat the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey realized that it was difficult to gain the upper hand in the combat. Hence, it began to move in all directions and flee from Suzimo with swift styles and agile steps. Of course, from the beginning till the end, Suzimo did not use all of his strength. Hence, although the spirit monkey would occasionally scream loudly, gnashing his teeth, it could still get up and fight again when he was overturned by Suzimo's hit. The spirit monkey was a good sparring partner. Suzimo not only wanted to practice his martial skills but also comprehend the gist of the sanguine ape tri-style as much as possible. A human and a monkey did not interact much, but they had an indescribable, tacit understanding with each other. In the time to come, Suzimo lived in this cave. A man and a monkey occasionally went out to look for trouble with the wolf clan. After killing many wolves, they fled before the wolves could round them up. Of course, Suzimo refused to smear himself with the spirit monkey's poop anymore. He found a type of herb that could conceal his smell and avoided the wolves. Outside the cave, Suzimo and the spirit monkey joined forces to kill wolves. After returning to the cave, after just a few interactions, a human and a monkey would indulge in a sparring match. Later on, when the spirit monkey realized that he could not gain the upper hand, it felt indignant and started to do sneak attacks. Sometimes, when Suzimo was resting, eating, or sleeping, the spirit monkey would sneak up to punch him before turning and escaping, then make funny faces at Suzimo from afar, laughing arrogantly and loudly as if it was the victor. After some time, as Suzimo's spirit perception became increasingly acute, the spirit monkey found it hard to succeed in his sneak attacks. In the blink of an eye, another 5 months passed. The 1 year of test in Kanglang mountain range was almost coming to an end. During this period, Suzimo had been refining the energy of the scarlet flame fruit and devouring blood and flesh at the same time. The body tempering and tendons transformation realms advanced continuously towards phenomenal success. Suzimo's body was coordinated, it could be hard or soft, and his strides were as light as a raccoon. When he walked, there was no sound in the air and no traces in the snow. He leaped and shuttled in the dense forest like apes. Using the old tree branches as his support, his feet did not even need to touch the ground. Of course, to Suzimo, his close combat ability had improved the most. In Kanglang mountain range, there were not many spirit beasts that were Suzimo's match now. A man and a monkey seemed to have become the lord of the place. Many spirit beasts would choose to retreat at the sight of them. Suzimo had a hunch that the cold lake in the cave was not ordinary. During this period, he dived into the cold lake countless times, wanting to explore it. However, before Suzimo could travel to the lake bed, bone-chilling coldness would penetrate his body and slow down his blood circulation, showing signs of freezing. He would return without any success each time. Today, Suzimo planned to check out the cold lake one last time before he left the Kanglang mountain range. Not long after, Suzimo rose to the surface of the water. He could not hide the disappointment in his eyes and shook his head. He still did not succeed. Body tempering and tendons transformation sections trained the flesh, blood, and large tendons. In the deeper waters, the 3 body parts could endure the invasion of the cold, but when the coldness penetrated the bones and seeped through the blood veins, Suzimo could not endure it longer. In the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, the 2 sections after tendons transformation were bones strengthening and marrow cleansing. It seems that I have the capability to get close to the bottom of the lake only after cultivating the marrow cleansing section. I can come again and explore at that time. Suzimo said secretly. He did not know where the spirit monkey went. Perhaps it went out to look for the wolf clan's trouble. Suzimo was not worried. The spirit monkey was extremely alert and intelligent. Although there were many spirit beasts in Kanglang mountain range, it was difficult for them to hurt it. Furthermore, during this period, the spirit monkey's ability had improved much after sparring and fighting with Suzimo. Suzimo was most curious of something. The spirit monkey seemed to have learned the tendons transformation section before. The spirit monkey not only knew the sanguine ape tri-style. His usual breathing and expiration was also similar to that in the tendon's transformation section. Yet, it was a little different. It seemed a little strange. When Suzimo questioned the spirit monkey, it seemed to be a taboo. It always averted his question. Later on, Suzimo no longer questioned him. Today, Suzimo did not leave the cave. He intended to bid farewell to the spirit monkey upon its return and then return to Pingyang town. 1 year had passed. Suzimo missed the Su family very much, especially his older brother and younger sister. Of course, Suzimo also looked forward to meeting Daiyu again. In the blink of an eye, the sun gradually descended and it was almost evening. The spirit monkey had not returned. Suzimo furrowed his brows. There was a flash of worry in his eyes. Kanglang mountain range was very eerie at night. Scary spirit demons would often appear, looking for prey. Although Suzimo and the spirit monkey were very powerful, they were not a match for spirit demons. Hence, before the night arrived, they would return to the mountain cave. The situation of the spirit monkey not returning for the entire day had never happened before. Suzimo felt very uneasy. He suddenly stood up and drew out the thunderbolt saber that was pierced in the stone wall. He tied it to his back and stepped out of the cave. Chapter 19, You Are the One Courting Death. Chapter 19, You Are the One Courting Death. The sky gradually darkened. It was almost evening. It was extremely dangerous to tread in Kanglang mountain range at this hour. Even Suzimo could not guarantee his own safety. If he were to encounter spirit demons, the odds would not be in his favor. However, Suzimo still decided to look for the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey had not only saved his life but also was deeply bonded to him. After 6 months of interaction and numerous sparrings, a man and a monkey had gradually forged a close relationship. Getting along with the spirit monkey was much easier than getting along with humans. Mutual sincerity was the only requirement. Although the spirit monkey loved to fight and poke fun at Suzimo, it would not lie to or make use of him. There was neither mutual deceit and distrust nor plotting against each other. It was easy to identify the spirit monkey through its awful body odor. After getting a few whiffs outside the cave, Suzimo decided to dash towards a certain direction. It was only later on did Suzimo realize that this monkey had a special preference for its own poop. Hence, the fact that it was willing to smear its poop on Suzimo meant that it had treated him as one of its own. Along the way, Suzimo encountered many spirit beasts. However, Suzimo did not engage in any fights with them. Instead, he detoured and continued to search for the spirit monkey via the latter's body odor. Most of these spirit beasts recognized Suzimo. Hence, they would not court trouble by looking for him on their own accord. Not long after, Suzimo halted his steps. Both his ears wriggled and captured the faint sounds of weapons clashing against one another. Suzimo narrowed his eyes. Why would there be sounds of weapons clashing in Kanglang mountain range? Even Carnate experts dared not venture deep into Kanglang mountain range, especially when night was nearing. Cultivator. This word flashed across Suzimo's mind. His expression was as capricious as the weather. If it were 1 year ago, like an aggressive and ignorant rookie, Suzimo would be very eager and thrilled to fight them on. However, having gone through a year of solid training, Suzimo was not as immature and impetuous as before. Most importantly, cultivators who dared to remain at Kanglang mountain range in the evening were definitely at advanced realms. They could not possibly be level 1 or 2 chi refinement warriors. Most of the spirit beasts in Kanglang mountain range were not threats to the spirit monkey. However, the situation would be different if the spirit monkey were to encounter a cultivator. At the thought of this, Suzimo crawled on the ground with both his hands and legs. He was twisting and turning like an anaconda slithering across the forest without a single sound. Anaconda swarth. The first style of tendon's transformation was to approach the opponent without a sound. The sound of weapons clashing ahead were becoming increasingly clearer and intensive. In between the clashes, he could even hear the sounds of some men taunting and a woman snarling. Under the dark and misty sky, Suzimo lay in the grass and observed the battle that was occurring about 10 feet from him. The trees and plants surrounding the battle had already been cut by the weapons. A relatively wide and spacious open space could be seen. 5 men dressed in Taoist robes were surrounding and attacking a lady in yellow robe. Each of the 5 men was controlling a flying sword and brandishing both hands. It was as if an invisible force was connecting the flying sword to the individual. The yellow-robed lady was also controlling a flying sword. There was a layer of frost on the sword. Apparently, this sword was more superior than those in the hands of the 5 men. The flying sword seemed very light and agile under the control of the yellow-robed lady. The yellow-robed lady seemed to have some treasure with her. When she was occasionally pierced by the other party's flying sword, a glowing shield would light up around her body. However, the shine of the shield got dimmer and dimmer as time passed. The yellow-robed lady was fighting against 5 people. Her strides looked clumsy. It seemed that she could not hold up any longer. She was obviously disadvantaged now. At the sight of the fighting and killing between the cultivators, Suzimo felt that he had widened his horizons. Suzimo retracted his gaze and looked at the other side. Beside the battlefield, 2 men were watching the fight. Their attires were completely the same as those 5 men on the battlefield. Obviously, they belonged to the same group. There was a spirit monkey standing in between the 2 men. It was covered with injuries but looked arrogant and indignant, its eyes shining with a murderous aura. Suzimo focused his gaze. Both the fore and hind limbs of the spirit monkey had been cuffed tightly by 2 iron hoops. The sharp spikes inside the rim of the hoops had already pierced into its flesh. The spirit monkey had completely lost its freedom. It was hard for it to move an inch. Suzimo had never fought with the cultivators and did not know their tactics. He was further unaware of the realms that these few cultivators were at. However, a murderous intent rose in Suzimo's heart at the thought that the spirit monkey was in trouble. His gaze was cold and sinister. Suzimo pondered for a moment. He did not strike immediately. Instead, he lowered his body and hid himself more. This was because he knew that once he strikes, he must kill his enemies at once. He could not give the opponent any time to react. This was not a one-to-one combat. He faced a total of 7 cultivators. A chi refinement warrior with a gaunt and thin face smiled and said lustfully, "Young lady, your augmentation talisman won't be able to hold out long. I advise you to surrender. Otherwise, you will suffer." That's right. Swords and daggers don't have eyes. If they cut your little face accidentally, it will be such a pity. Haha, you have been poisoned with our Pisces aqua powder. You can't hang on for too long, even if you are a foundation establishment cultivator. The yellow-robed lady arched her brows in anger, her expression chilly and aloof. She said coldly, "The few of you are courting death. You're just chi refinement warriors. I'm a cultivator from Azure Frost sect. If you know what is good for you, quickly surrender." Suzimo was stunned. He did not expect the yellow-robed lady to be a foundation establishment cultivator. The frightening thing was that she was seemingly poisoned by the Pisces aqua powder. Hence, she would not be a match for these 5 chi refinement warriors. As to the augmentation talisman mentioned by that chi refinement warrior, Suzimo had heard about it. One of the chi refinement warriors, who had a large face, sneered. "Hey, since we know that you are a cultivator of Azure Frost sect, the more we can't let you off. You have fallen into the joyful Seven's hands. We'll make you feel so ecstatic that you will crave for death. Be obedient." Seemingly distracted by these words, the flying sword controlled by the yellow-robed lady halted for a moment. As a result, she was pierced by 2 other flying swords. Clang! Clang! A shield with a golden glow appeared around the yellow-robed lady and blocked the 2 flying swords. However, upon the impact of the blow, the shield was filled with cracks and looked like it would break at any point in time. The yellow-robed lady pursed her red lips without saying a word. She defended with all her might and refused to concede defeat. On the other hand, the bald-headed chi refinement warrior beside the spirit monkey looked relaxed. He said smilingly, "We have gained a lot in this trip to Kanglang mountain range. This lady definitely has a lot of treasures with her. Most importantly, be it face or figure, this lady is of supreme grade. She will be a delight for the 7 of us." "Ha ha! That said, if we don't have the beast trapping hoop that Master passed down to us, we really won't be able to take down this monkey, said another chi refinement warrior who was carrying a long rod. There was a lingering fear in his heart. The bald-headed chi refinement warrior sneered and said, "After we return, let's torture this monkey and force it to pledge a blood oath. I don't believe that we can't subdue a beast." When the two saw that the outcome was quite certain, they could not help relaxing a little and chatting casually. At this moment, there was a bloody shine in the spirit monkey's eyes. Initially rooted to the ground, it suddenly turned its body and opened its mouth wide, revealing its sharp teeth as it bit the neck of the chi refinement warrior beside her. The spirit monkey's limbs could not move as they had been bound. However, biting was an innate skill of it since the day it was born. If it could successfully bite the chi refinement warrior, the latter would not have any chance of surviving. The spirit monkey was tall and big. It had to lower its head to bite the chi refinement warrior who was relatively shorter. In addition, its body was restrained. As such, its action was slightly delayed and that person reacted in time. The countenance of the chi refinement warrior holding the rod changed. He quickly dodged. Pierce. Although he had avoided being bitten on the vital point of his neck, a big piece of flesh on his shoulder tip had been torn off by the spirit monkey. Fresh blood was spilling out from it. "Ah!" The chi refinement warrior cried in pain, looking ghastly pale. He touched the small cloth bag below his waist and a porcelain bottle appeared in his palm. He opened the bottle and took out a tuft of powder-like substance before applying it on his wound. This stopped the fresh blood from dripping. It was very amazing. After the chi refinement warrior managed his wound, he lifted his steel rod furiously. There was a flash of light and the rod landed hard on the knees of the spirit monkey. He scolded, "Bastard, kneel down." There was a loud thud on the ground. The spirit monkey trembled. Flashes of pain could be seen in its eyes. However, this hit by the rod did not make the spirit monkey kneel down. On the contrary, it provoked its murderous instinct. The spirit monkey chewed the piece of torn flesh rampantly, revealing a ferocious and menacing glare. It then swallowed it in one gulp. Thereafter, it turned to face the chi refinement warrior and laughed gaga loudly with a mocking look in its eyes. He was untamed, obstinate, and unyielding. "Bastard, you're courting death." At the sight of the spirit monkey's behavior, the chi refinement warrior's fury intensified. He did not care whether his wound would burst open. He lifted the steel rod again and smashed it towards the top of the spirit monkey's head. At this very moment, a cold voice rang in his ears. "You're the one courting death." Chapter 20, Kill. Chapter 20, Kill. When this sound was heard, it was accompanied by a strong aura of death that almost suffocated him. "Who is this? You actually sneaked up behind me quietly and I didn't notice it." Before he could finish his thought, his head hurt and he lost consciousness immediately. Initially, the chi refinement warrior who was standing at the other side looked relaxed when he saw his comrade teach the spirit monkey a lesson agitatedly. He did not expect to see such a terrifying and eerie scene. A distance away, the bush had moved a little but the bald-headed chi refinement warrior did not take it to heart. However, a figure mysteriously appeared behind his comrade in the next moment. Enshrouded by the misty and dark skies, the intruder exuded a towering murderous aura, as if he was a ghost from hell. It happened too quickly and suddenly. The intruder slammed his palm on the head of the chi refinement warrior holding the rod. The latter was caught off guard and could not defend himself at all. Poof, poof, poof. The head of the chi refinement warrior holding the rod was actually pressed directly into his chest. Blood-chilling sounds of flesh and blood bursting could be heard coming from the neck. The bald-headed chi refinement warrior looked aghast. Just as he was about to shout out loudly, he saw the intruder taking successive moves. The figure stretched his legs had reached him in just 2 strides. The murderous aura was pervasive. This overbearing aura forced the bald-headed chi refinement warrior to swallow the words in his mouth back into his throat again. The bald-headed chi refinement warrior instinctively stretched out his hands towards the cloth bag on his waist. He calmed down slightly only when a flying sword landed in his hands. However, before the chi refinement warrior could draw out his flying sword, the intruder's palm had already landed on him. Pa. The skull of the bald-headed chi refinement warrior was smashed in just one hit. His brains split and he died on the spot. In actual fact, when the spirit monkey tried to bite the chi refinement warrior holding the rod, Suzimo had already begun taking action. However, as both parties were about 10 feet away from each other, Suzimo dared not increase his speed, for fear of being discovered. When Suzimo reached these two chi refinement warriors' sides, they were destined to meet with a fatal calamity. The entire process seemed very slow upon narration, but in fact, it occurred in the split of a moment. To top-notch martial experts, this moment was especially crucial. Oh! The spirit monkey recognized Suzimo. His eyes lit up and he was overjoyed. He shouted loudly to express the excitement in his heart. Suzimo ignored the spirit monkey. Without a word and carrying a calm demeanor, he had slayed the bald-headed chi refinement warrior. Twisting and moving, he charged straight to the other battlefield. Long before he attacked, Suzimo had already made the preparations. Once he attacked, he had to give it his best shot and crumble the other party in lightning speed. Putting aside the obvious point that these 7 chi refinement warriors were ill-intentioned, the painful torture that they administered to the spirit monkey alone had already provoked Suzimo's murderous instinct. Most importantly, if he were to let off any one of them, they would become a source of endless trouble. Suzimo heard very clearly that these 7 individuals were from the Joyful clan. Who knew what strong and powerful cultivators were in this clan? Would they hunt him down? On the other battlefield, 5 chi refinement warriors from the Joyful clan jumped in shock at the sudden change in circumstances. Who would have thought that 2 of their clan mates would die grievously in a matter of moments? The most perplexing thing was that the intruder was clad in skins of beast and full of black stubble on his face. He looked like an uncivilized, primitive wild man. They also could not sense any flow of spirit chi from his body. He was not a cultivator. Such a barbarian could actually kill 2 level 6 chi refinement warriors in the blink of an eye. The 5 of them already did not have the time to think, because this barbarian had already dashed to them with a pervasive murderous intent and monstrous aura. There was a flash of cruelty in the eyes of the fat-faced chi refinement warrior who was facing Suzimo. He smiled grimly. Where did this barbarian come from? You have no sense of danger. Chi. This fellow snarled and directed his flying sword to the oncoming Suzimo. A beam of light shone from the flying sword. The sword's aura intensified. It was so extraordinary. Suzimo closed his eyes briefly. Facing this flying sword, he had initially planned to use the bovine-tongued saber to shatter or hurl away the sword. However, Suzimo's acute spirit perception told him that this sword was very powerful and might possibly injure him. Suzimo charged forward in lightning speed. However, the flying sword was lunging at him at an even faster speed. If it was 1 year ago, Suzimo would not be able to react in time, let alone dodge this flying sword. However, today, Suzimo suddenly lowered his body. All of his 4 limbs exerted strength as he twisted his body, staying close to the ground. Agile and swift, he had a close shave with the flying sword. In a matter of moments, he appeared in front of the fat-faced chi refinement warrior. The chi refinement warrior was stunned, the colors on his face drained. Suzimo suddenly got up. His body and 4 limbs became as soft and flexible as an anaconda. It coiled onto the plump body of this man. Large tendons pulsated, flesh and blood expanded and the entire body exploded with energy. After Anaconda Swarth, he executed another killing move of tendons transformation, Anaconda Strangle. All the spirit beasts in the Kanglang mountain range were aware. After being bitten by the anaconda, one might still escape. However, if one's body were to be coiled by the anaconda, they would die for sure. Even if one's body was strong enough to wrestle with the anaconda, he would eventually die of suffocation. In the past 6 months, although the spirit monkey often sparred with Suzimo, it had never dared to allow Suzimo to close up on and coil it. This chi refinement warrior did not have a body that was as strong and resilient as the spirit monkey. After Suzimo wrapped and strangled it, all the bones in his body were crushed. Deafening sounds of pa could be heard. It was horrible and gruesome. Poof! Bloody fog filled the air. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, A burly figure burst open on the spot and turned into a puddle of fleshy mud. This was the true powers of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. After killing this man, Suzimo did not stop. He used Plow Heaven Stride and headed towards another chi refinement warrior with a gaunt and frail face. Although Suzimo was unaware of the cultivation realm of the 5 chi refinement warriors present, using his spirit perception, he could vaguely sense that the fat-faced chi refinement warrior who died earlier and the one before him right now were the greatest threats to him. He could reduce the chances of an accident to the lowest if he could kill the 2 of them first. At the sight of Suzimo killing 3 people, the skinny chi refinement warrior wore a grave expression. He instantly became cautious. A ray of light burst out from his fingertip and entered the flying sword. The flying sword flickered and shone brightly. Go! This flying sword dashed towards Suzimo, its movements as swift as thunder and as fast as lightning. One of the 3 chi refinement warriors who were attacking the yellow-robed lady also came forward and directed his flying sword to pierce the middle of Suzimo's back. The 2 chi refinement warriors concentrated on rounding up and attacking Suzimo. Suzimo seemed to have eyes grown on his back. Without even turning back, as he was charging forward, he dodged and got away from the flying sword piercing towards his back. Simultaneously, Suzimo used his backhand to grip the thunderbolt saber on his back, spread his arms and slashed towards the flying sword coming towards him. Clang! Ear-piercing sounds of weapons clashing could be heard. The thunderbolt saber chipped off after colliding with the flying sword. Cracks appeared around the chip. Obviously, the saber was ruined and could no longer be used. Suzimo was stunned. Since he got hold of the thunderbolt saber, it had always been of use to him. It could even slash the skin, hair, flesh and blood of spirit beasts. Unexpectedly, it almost shattered into pieces after colliding with the agile, long and slim flying sword of the cultivator. Suzimo's expression did not change. He was not bothered. This was because he had already achieved his objective. The thunderbolt saber had hit the flying sword, riding on the shocking energy that exploded from his body. It had already sent the flying sword on a deviated route that was some distance away. The flying sword that should initially pierce into Suzimo's skull only passed through the passage beside his cheek. Right from the beginning, Suzimo had never paused his attacks for a single moment. His speed only increased. He was closing in. Suzimo used the thunderbolt saber to block the flying sword so that he could shorten the distance between he and the thin and frail chi refinement warrior. Suzimo remembered Dai Yu's words by heart. Most of the cultivators' bodies are relatively weak. As long as you can avert their first wave of attack and take the chance to shorten the distance between both of you, you will be able to make use of the strong and powerful close combat ability of the demon clan to slay them. Chapter 21, Calamity. Chapter 21, Calamity. Suzimo widened his strides and walked to the front of the skinny chi refinement warrior. As soon as he flipped his hand, the ground-rupturing palm was violently executed towards the face of the other party. The skinny chi refinement warrior was very alert and quick to react. At the sight of Suzimo dodging the flying sword, he had searched out a face mirror from the cloth bag on his waist and chanted something. The mirror enlarged instantly, glistening and crystal clear. Suzimo had long noticed the small cloth bag hanging on the waist of the cultivators. It seemed to be a cosmic bag. Whenever they touched it, they could retrieve something. However, Suzimo did not find it unusual. Compared to the methods that Dai Yu used to open up a big and spacious cultivation field, these small cloth bags were obviously much weaker. In a hurry, the skinny chi refinement warrior lifted the mirror in his hands to shield his head. Bang! Crack! 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 Suzimo's hands landed on the mirror of the skinny chi refinement warrior. First, there was a deafening sound of an explosion. Immediately after, lines of cracks appeared on the mirror surface. Ah! The skinny chi refinement warrior gave out a miserable cry. His arms had been instantly crushed by the powers reflected by the surface of the mirror. His veins and bones shattered and his body was flung off. This time, Suzimo dared to hit with his bare fists. On the one hand, it was because he sensed that the mirror did not have any attack properties. On the other hand, The surface of the mirror did not shine when the other party took it out. As expected, this mirror had been destroyed in one hit by Suzimo. The skinny chi refinement warrior almost died on the spot. He fell to the ground, looking as white as a sheet and shrieking, "Who are you? How dare you intervene in the matters of my Joy clan? I'll kill your people." Suzimo sneered. He moved forward with large strides, wanting to end the life of this skinny chi refinement warrior. At this very moment, Suzimo sighted a flash of strange looks beneath the eyes of the skinny chi refinement warrior. Not good. Suzimo was stunned. He quickly moved backwards. This was the first time that Suzimo was involved in a fight with a cultivator. He had to be extremely cautious, for fear that the other party might catch him off guard with some methods that he was unaware of. Splash! The skinny chi refinement warrior suddenly raised his hand and dispersed a powder that emitted a faint fragrance. Nevertheless, Suzimo was a step quicker in moving backwards and did not come into contact with this mist of powder. "Comrade, this is the joyful reunion powder. You must not breathe this in." The sound of the yellow-robed lady could be heard. It was gentle and beautiful, carrying a tinge of anxiety. Suzimo frowned and looked at the skinny chi refinement warrior who was hiding in the mist of powder. He paused for a moment. If he were to wait for a while, these powder would naturally disperse and not pose a threat. However, Suzimo could not waste time because there were 3 more cultivators nearby. Suzimo decisively turned and gave up on that fellow temporarily. He then charged towards the person behind him. At the sight of the skinny chi refinement warrior being reduced to a handicapped by one hit of the palm, the man behind Suzimo had long turned pale with fright. He quickly controlled the flying sword to charge at Suzimo's glabella with all his might. There was no flicker or shine of light in this flying sword. Suzimo closed his eyes and did not intend to dodge it. Maintaining the posture of downward thrust, he stuck out his right hand and gently lay it on the oncoming flying sword. Rap, hit, pull, swash. Although this flying sword did not break, it had been thrown aside by Suzimo. It landed in the mud, slanted. This chi refinement warrior was stunned. Although he was only controlling a low-end item spirit, he had never seen anyone receiving a spirit weapon with bare hands and not suffering any injury. What kind of monster was this? After a moment of dawdle, Suzimo appeared by the side of this man. His body curled, one knee seemingly kneeling, his palms put together and lifted up. Sanguine ape fruit offering. Bang! This lift up happened to support the chin of this chi refinement warrior. Sounds of breaking could be heard coming from the neck bones and chin of this man. His head fell backwards and hung on his back. His eyes were wide open, filled with horror. He was already dead. There were 2 more chi refinement warriors attacking the yellow-robed lady. At the sight of this, they were instantly scared out of their wits. Suzimo spread his body and charged towards one of them. Left hand guarding his chest, right hand clenched into a fist, large tendons pulsating, blood and flesh expanding, his fists turned into seal and landed from the sky with a deafening thud. A large shadow engulfed, covering the sky and the sun. This chi refinement warrior was stunned so badly by Suzimo's aura that both his lungs and guts were splitting. How would he dare to try to attack or defend? He hurriedly turned and tried to flee. Believing that he was going to escape from the scope of the large seal above him, he was elated. At this very moment, he could hear the sounds of bow strings vibrating. It was petrifying. Pang! 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 Suzimo's large tendons stretched and his arms swelled and enlarged. The gigantic seal came crashing down, caught up with that chi refinement warrior who was fleeing in panic and landed on the top of his head. Poof! After his skull exploded, there was still some leftover energy in the gigantic seal. It immediately crushed and shattered this man's body. At the sight of 5 of his clan mates dying and one being severely injured, the remaining chi refinement warrior lost his cool. While he was distracted, the yellow-robed lady controlled the flying sword and circled his neck once. A large head was hurled off and fresh blood splattered. The headless corpse fell to the ground and twitched from time to time without any consciousness. The yellow-robed lady was covered in delicate beads of sweat. After killing this man, her chest was heaving and she was panting slightly, seemingly to have reached the limit of her physique. Suzimo turned and looked at the skinny chi refinement warrior who lost his arm. However, he discovered that the other party had seized the opportunity to escape to a distance. His right hand was pressing onto his wound. With a flying sword under his feet, he traveled through the sky and disappeared into the forest immediately. Suzimo frowned. At this moment, it was too late for him to chase him. Or rather, even if he could catch up with him, Suzimo could not do anything to him as he was high in the air. Suddenly, Suzimo discovered that he had a fatal weakness. He could not fly in the sky. If the chi refinement warrior were to execute the sword Kinesis flight immediately before fighting him, he could only be attacked and could not strike back. After this round of killings, night had gradually fallen. One could vaguely hear the roaring sounds of the spirit beasts shaking the heavens and earth. Looking at the back view of the skinny chi refinement warrior in the darkness, there was a flash of worry in Suzimo's eyes. This man's escape was ultimately a calamity. No one knew when this calamity would begin to erupt. However, another thought flashed across Suzimo's mind. Night had fallen and it was the time where spirit beasts and spirit demons come out preying. This man's broken arm would emit a strong stench of blood. He might not leave the Kanglang mountain range alive. Oh, oh. The spirit monkey's shouts interrupted Suzimo's deep thoughts. The spirit monkey was tied up. He leaped about on the ground that he was standing at, shouting at Suzimo. It wanted him to help it remove the iron hoops around its limbs quickly. Stay there obediently first. Who told you to run around? It was a rare sight for the spirit monkey to be defeated. Suzimo deliberately cast him aside and went to the corpses of the few cultivators. He removed the 6 small cloth bags from their bodies and tucked them into his arms without even looking. Although he did not know what they were, Suzimo could sense that these small cloth bags were quite famous and seemed to be cosmic bags. It definitely contained many treasures. Suzimo turned and picked up a flying sword that had fallen to the ground. The shape of this flying sword was a little unique. It did not have a handle but only a blade that was extremely sharp. Typical people would have problems holding it. However, this was not much of an issue for Suzimo. Suzimo held onto the sharp blade with his bare hands and walked to the spirit monkey. He aimed at the iron hoops that bound the spirit monkey's limbs and slashed hard. Clang! Sparks were flying everywhere. A white streak appeared on the iron hoop but it did not break. Suzimo furrowed his brows slightly. This flying sword could even shatter the thunderbolt saber. Yet, it could not break the iron hoops on the spirit monkey's limbs. This was a little troublesome. Suzimo could faintly sense that it was not because the flying sword was not sharp enough, but because he did not use it correctly. Chapter 22 Yarrow Shui. Chapter 22 Yarrow Shui. Just as Suzimo was deep in thought, the yellow-robed lady gradually approached him and said softly, "I'm Yarrow Shui from Azure Frost Sect. Thank you for saving me and fighting for justice, comrade." Suzimo's thoughts were focused on how to remove the hoops from the spirit monkey's forelimbs. He only glanced at Yarrow Shui but did not reply. Yarrow Shui pondered shortly before saying, "Comrade, you wish to remove this beast trapping hoop, right? Why don't I give it a try?" Suzimo took a hesitant glance at Yarrow Shui before nodding. Yarrow Shui tapped the flying sword in her hands gently. 2 flashes of light appeared and a layer of frost covered the blade of the sword instantly. The aura of the sword was appalling. Suzimo looked on conscientiously. Earlier on, only 1 flash of light appeared on the flying swords of the 2 chi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan. However, there were 2 flashes of light on the flying sword in Yarrow Shui's hands now. Obviously, the sword in this lady's hands was of a better quality. The blade was also sharper. Suzimo quietly memorized this and paid careful attention to Yarrow Shui's every move. He saw Yarrow Shui controlling the flying sword's movement from a distance. When her slim and fair finger pointed forward a little, the flying sword drew an arc in mid-air and slashed the beast trapping hoop hard. Pa! Pa! Coinciding with the noise, the beast trapping hoop broke. Having felt aggrieved for some time, the spirit monkey was thrilled after breaking free from the restraint. Oblivious to its bleeding wounds, it chattered "oh, oh" continuously. "Thank you. Su Zimo nodded to Yarrow Shui. It's not a big deal. Yarrow Shui smiled. Suddenly, a doubt arose in her heart and she could not help asking, is this a spirit beast that you reared and nurtured? Yarrow Shui could tell that this wild man who was clad in hide knew the spirit monkey. Most likely, he intervened in this matter because he wanted to save the spirit monkey and then saved her in the passing. In the cultivation world, many cultivators would rear and groom spirit beasts to improve their combat ability. Once the spirit beast had pledged a blood oath, they would not betray the cultivator. Otherwise, they would be punished by heaven and die from a reflux of their own blood flow. Upon hearing this question, Su Zimo frowned, shook his head and said, he is my friend. Ah! Yarrow Shui blinked her eyes. She was very puzzled. It was really hard for her to imagine how a human could become friends with a spirit beast. Since ancient times, human and demon were of different paths and in constant fights with each other. Their relationship was getting from bad to worse. There was only one possibility of interaction, a master and slave relationship whereby one party had taken a blood oath. The term friend truly seemed a little unique when it came to the two different clans. After all, there was an ancient saying that those of different clans would not be of the same heart and mind. Su Zimo ignored Yarrow Shui. He approached the few corpses and picked up the 5 flying swords. Looking at the broken thunderbolt saber, Su Zimo felt a little hesitant. In the end, he still picked it up and tied it behind him. Suddenly, Su Zimo sensed great danger and turned behind. In the deep parts of the forest behind him, 2 dots of dimmed lights appeared in the darkness. The aura was terrifying. They were exuding a chilling murderous intent. Pest! Su Zimo exhaled a breath of cold air in shock. He said in a low voice, it's a spirit demon. Quickly leave. Before Su Zimo spoke, the spirit monkey had already ran off. Although it was injured and limping, it could still move swiftly and agilely in the forest. Yarrow Shui was obviously a little panicky and at a loss of what to do. Su Zimo did not plan to bother about her initially. However, this lady had helped to chop the beast trapping hoop earlier. If he were to leave her behind, she would most probably die here given her current state. Su Zimo took a glance at her and said in a low voice, follow me. Just as he spoke, Su Zimo had already begun to move forward. Yarrow Shui's cheeks blushed faintly. She gritted her teeth and quickly followed him. Yarrow Shui had been poisoned with the Pisces aqua powder. She would not be impacted much if she could force out the poison and nurse her injuries. However, she had just been engaged in a fierce battle with the Joyful 7 earlier and almost exhausted all her spiritual powers. She could not even fly by standing on her flying sword. As such, she gradually could not endure the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. She felt her entire body heating up and limbs numb. Yarrow Shui was very clear of the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. No matter how strong-willed one would not be able to endure the power of this drug. If I can't endure it, I will rather be devoured by this spirit demon than to be humiliated by others. Yarrow Shui bit her cherry-red lips and quietly decided. The spirit monkey had long disappeared after running off. That wild man in front of her appeared faintly from time to time. Yarrow Shui tried her best to chase up to him. The unknown spirit demon behind followed her closely. Its chilling gaze was like a thorn on her back, never disappearing for a moment. After running for a while, Yarrow Shui's legs were wobbly. She almost tripped and fell onto the ground. Although she was already prepared to be buried in the beast's mouth, she was terrified at the thought that she would be torn apart and devoured by the spirit demon. Sounds of the spirit demon treading on the grass behind her were getting closer and closer. The murderous intent was pervasive and cold. Yarrow Shui could even smell the fishy breath of spirit demon's mouth. However, at this very moment, Yarrow Shui did not have the energy to run anymore. Forget it. To think that I, Yarrow Shui, would die at this place. If father knows about this, sigh. Yarrow Shui was totally exhausted. She stood still, panting. She felt aggrieved and sorrowful. Closing her eyes, 2 streaks of tears flowed down quietly. At this moment, Yarrow Shui suddenly felt a strong and sturdy arm on her waist. Thereafter, her body felt light. Someone had taken her away from the place. Miss, pardon me. There is a need to adapt to the change in circumstances. The man's voice rang beside her ears. Yarrow Shuer opened her eyes wide and saw the side view of Suzimo's face. So he didn't leave me behind. At this moment, Yarrow Shuer had indescribable joy in her heart. She seemed to have found a place to vent all her grievances and sufferings now. Tears streamed down her face. Swoosh, swoosh. Winds howled and shadows of trees retreated. The man held 6 flying swords with his left hand and 1 person with his right hand. Yet, this did not slow him down. Instead, he moved even faster. It was only until now did Yarrow Shuer realize that this man did not use all of his strength during the earlier stretch of journey. Otherwise, she would not have been able to catch up with him. This person is not bad. Yarrow Shuer was drained of energy. Leaning closer to the man who carried her, the Pisces aqua powder was continuously taking effect, causing her thoughts to run wild. Yarrow Shuer was stunned. She quickly bit the tip of her tongue and tried hard to maintain soberness. Dashing left and limping right from time to time, the man seemed to be very familiar with the Kanglang mountain range. Although Yarrow Shuer could hear the spirit beast roaring, they did not encounter any attack. After an unknown period of time, Yarrow Shuer felt dizzy and could no longer control her body. Yarrow Shuer was gradually losing her consciousness. At this moment, the man's voice rang again, "Miss, wake up." Oh, oh. Yarrow Shuer's body was feverish and she was sleep-talking. Swoosh. Sounds of water could be heard. Ubiquitous feelings of coldness surrounded Yarrow Shuer's burning body. Shivering, Yarrow Shuer sobered up, her pair of eyes gradually regaining sight. This. Where is this? Shivering, Yarrow Shuer asked and looked at the surroundings. This was a small and narrow mountain cave. She was in the middle of a cold lake, and there was nothing around it. Although the effect of the Pisces aqua powder was still present, the bone-chilling coldness from the lake waters constantly stimulated Yarrow Shuer's nerves and allowed her to maintain sober. You are a foundation establishment cultivator. Coupled with the aid of this cold lake, you will most likely be able to diffuse the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. After saying these words, the man turned and left. Before leaving, that man found a few pieces of wolf skins and covered the entrance of this small and narrow cave. Sounds of the man's steps gradually faded away. Noticing all these, feelings of strangeness rose in Yarrow Shuer's heart. After falling into the lake, her clothes were already drenched. Nevertheless, the man did not peep at her at all. He was also very meticulous. He covered the cave's entrance as he was afraid that she would feel awkward. Although the effect of Pisces aqua powder was strong, it did not constitute as a threat to foundation establishment cultivators. Yarrow Shuer was feeling miserable that she did not have a chance to force the effect of the Pisces aqua powder out. Now that she was sober again, she quickly searched out an elixir from her storage bag and put it into her mouth. She then began to circulate the Spirit Heart Sutra. At this very moment, she could hear the man's voice mingled with the spirit monkey's chatters outside. A man and a monkey seemed to be communicating. The man's voice was neither loud nor soft. The volume was just audible to Yarrow Shuer. Yarrow Shuer felt her heart warmed. That man used such a method to tell her that he would always stay outside the cave. He was neither too far from nor too close to her. Hence, she could heal her injuries without any worries. This man is really interesting. Yarrow Shuer smiled gently. She looked so beautiful and flawless. Chapter 23, Fallen Deep into a Vortex. Chapter 23, Fallen Deep into a Vortex. Suzimo stepped out of the cave. The spirit monkey was waiting for him outside. The spirit monkey laughed gaga, pointing to the inside of the cave. He winked and made faces at Suzimo with a strange expression. He even wiggled his body a few times. Suzimo cursed and laughed. This damn monkey. You know everything. In actual fact, although Suzimo had not heard of the joyful reunion powder, he could vaguely guess the purpose and effect of this drug. He had studied for more than a decade. Suzimo would not take advantage of another person in a perilous state, not to mention that both of them met by chance. How are your injuries? Suzimo asked. Whoa. The spirit monkey waved its hands to express that it was fine. The spirit monkey's physique was amazing and body healing capabilities were extremely strong. It would recover in a few days' time. After being silent for a while, Suzimo said softly, "I'll be leaving." "Oh." The spirit monkey widened its big eyes. They were filled with puzzlement. In the cognition of the spirit monkey, Suzimo was similar to him. He lived in the Kanglang mountain range, had no one to rely on or turn to, and had no strings attached. Suzimo pointed to the direction of Pingyang town and said, "There is a town about a few dozens of kilometers from Kanglang mountain range. My home is over there. I have to go back now." The spirit monkey stopped shouting. Tears welled up in its eyes. It looked a little sad. Turning its back, it quietly licked the wounds on his body. Suzimo felt a little complicated too. In Suzimo's eyes, the spirit monkey was no longer the initial savior that it was. The spirit monkey was a friend whom he ate, lived, and shared weals and woes with. Suzimo had also thought of bringing the spirit monkey with him, but this was not realistic. On one hand, Suzimo was worried that the spirit monkey could not get used to the outside world. On the other hand, he was worried that he would not be able to protect the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey was obstinate and unyielding. It was also eccentric and untamed. He did not know what kind of huge trouble it would stir up outside. Life outside might not be safer, happier, and more carefree than life in the Kanglang mountain range. "Comrade, you can come in." At this moment, the gentle voice of that lady could be heard coming from inside the cave. It broke the pin-drop silence outside the cave. Suzimo patted the spirit monkey's shoulders and stepped into the cave first. Although the night was dark, after cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Suzimo's eyesight was superb. At the sight of Yarrow Shui, he could not help being slightly stunned. Yarrow Shui's beauty was astonishing. Her beauty surpassed that of Shun Mengqi and was comparable to Dai Yu. It was just that she did not have the unique charisma on Dai Yu. Yarrow Shui had just gotten out of the cold lake. Her black tresses were still wet. She looked like a beauty who had just gotten out of a bath, with a touch of gentleness. She was very attractive. Suzimo was a little distracted but resumed his normal self after a moment. Looking at the current Yarrow Shui, he guessed that the effect of the joyful reunion powder had already faded. Suzimo nodded at Yarrow Shui and walked to his usual resting place. He searched out the few small cloth bags from the joyful clan and fidgeted with them curiously. "Comrade, I still don't know your name." Yarrow Shui smiled and asked. "Suzimo." Suzimo responded without even looking up. He continued to fidget with the cloth bags in his hands. Yarrow Shui looked at Suzimo, who was not far away. Recalling the embarrassing state that she had been in when poisoned by the joyful reunion powder, she could not help blushing and feeling shy. Yarrow Shui gently gritted her molars, her distracted eyes glancing everywhere. She tried to appear casual as she asked, "Just now, Miss lost your consciousness." Nothing happened. Before Yarrow Shui could finish her words, Suzimo added, "Oh." Yarrow Shui furrowed her brows when she discovered that Suzimo seemed reluctant to respond to her. He had been fiddling with the storage bags in his hands. She could not help feeling a little annoyed at heart. After watching by the side for a while, Yarrow Shui could not help asking, "Comrade, you don't seem to be a cultivator." Suzimo paused. He observed Yarrow Shui's eyes and said calmly, "I don't have a spirit root." At the sound of these words, there was not the slightest bit of contempt in Yarrow Shui's eyes. On the contrary, there was a flash of shock and regret. This subtle change made Suzimo feel a little positive about Yarrow Shui. Yarrow Shui approached Suzimo. She sat on the ground, not minding the dirt and mess. She said jokingly, "Then I won't address you as comrade anymore. It's only right that I call you Mr. Su." "It's up to you." Suzimo smiled. Yarrow Shui pointed at the cloth bags in Suzimo's hands and said, "This thing is a storage bag. It is a very common item in the cultivation world. Almost everyone will bring one with him. It is a cosmos bag and can store a lot of items." "Oh." However, the storage bag will only open after one uses spirit chi to stimulate it. While talking, Yarrow Shui took a storage bag and patted it with her palm. A pile of items dropped onto the ground. Most of them were bottles and jars. There were also dozens of stones the size of a fist. These are spirit stones. This is something that a cultivator cannot do without. There are 3 grades of it: supreme grade, middle grade, and inferior grade. These few are inferior grade spirit stones. As for spirit root, it can be categorized into 5 grades: pseudo spirit root, ordinary spirit root, superior class spirit root, earth spirit root, and the most rare heaven spirit root. Yarrow Shuer was very smart. Seemingly, she could tell that Su Zimo was very curious about cultivators. Hence, she tirelessly told him about the common information of cultivators. Dai Yu hardly talked about such things. Hence, Su Zimo could not help but be immersed in this information. One party was humble to learn and the other party spoke without any reservation. Before they knew it, it was already dawn and one night had passed. Even if one was a cultivator, he would feel tired after having a sleepless night. Su Zimo looked apologetic. He got up and said, "Miss Yarrow, regarding this information on cultivators, thank you for teaching me generously. I have gained a lot." Yarrow Shuer smiled and said, "If you wish to thank me, give me 3 pieces of wolf skins. This is also my purpose for this trip." There were hundreds of wolf skins inside this cave. Su Zimo waved his big hands and said, "Take as much as you want." Yarrow Shuer said, "Actually, everything on the spirit beasts are treasures. To a talisman master, hides are a necessity. You have so many spirit beast hides in the cave. If you sell them, you will be able to get many spirit stones in return." Yarrow Shuer had told Su Zimo earlier. In the cultivation world, there were 4 types of cultivators with a very special status. Their status was even higher than that of ordinary cultivators. The elixir refinement master could refine elixirs. There were numerous kinds of elixirs with a wide scope of usage. To cultivators, elixirs were indispensable. The weapon refinement master could refine various types and grades of spirit weapons. To cultivators, spirit weapons could significantly improve their ability and were also indispensable. The talisman master could create talismans. The augmentation talisman that Yarrow Shuer used to block the attacks of Joyful 7 earlier was one of such talismans. Without the augmentation talisman, Yarrow Shuer would have long been defeated and captured. The array formation master was proficient in the formation of arrays. Many of the major clans had major defensive array formations. If the cultivators were to fall into any of the arrays set up by opponents, they would be restrained everywhere and their lives might even be threatened. Of course, the prerequisite for becoming one of these 4 types of cultivators was the possession of a spirit root and becoming a chi refinement warrior. Su Zimo shook his head and said, "Even if I can exchange for spirit stones, I have no use for them." "Why not?" Yarrow Shuer said immediately, "You have to know that 1 piece of inferior grade spirit stone is worth 1,000 taels of gold. In some trading houses of the cultivation world, various and numerous kinds of items are available for sale. One will have to use spirit stones to trade for these items. If you have enough spirit stones, you can even assign some assignments and engage the chi refinement warriors to complete them. Of course, the higher the realm that the chi refinement warrior is at, the higher the cost of hiring." Upon hearing this, Su Zimo's heart wavered. He had a vague feeling that these spirit stones might really be of some use. After pondering for a while, Su Zimo asked again, "At what realms were the Joyful 7 at?" Yarrow Shuer said, "Those 2 guarding the spirit monkey were the weakest. They are level 5 chi refinement warriors. The one who escaped and the fat-faced one were the strongest. They are both level 8 chi refinement warriors. The remaining 3 were level 7 chi refinement warriors." Su Zimo nodded. 1 year of training and experience had not been in vain. Now, even level 8 chi refinement warrior was not his match. Su Zimo even had a hunch that level 9 chi refinement warrior would also be in danger if he were to close in on him. Of course, this was on the pretext that the other party would not execute the Sword Kiness's flight at the first instance. In fact, Sword Kiness's flight would deplete a lot of spirit chi. In fights and battles, be it chi refinement warrior or foundation establishment cultivator, they would save as much spirit chi as possible for use in attacking the opponent. With both feet on the ground, The other party could still defeat you by controlling the flying sword even if one were to execute sword kinesi's flight. Hence, in the midst of killings and fightings, almost none of the chi refinement warriors or foundation establishment cultivators would execute sword kinesi's flight and attack at the same time. This would not only cause distraction but also deplete a lot of spirit chi. Of course, it would be a different matter when it came to the perfected golden core realm. The ability of the perfected golden core was vastly different from the two mentioned before. One of the abilities was that the perfected golden core could completely lift himself off the ground without relying on any foreign object. Where do we go to sell these items? Su Zimo had quite a huge harvest yesterday. He had 6 storage bags. There were about 700 pieces of spirit stones in total. In addition, there were other flying swords, elixirs, and so on. Yarrow Shui said, in the Great Zhou dynasty, the largest trading house is the Sky Treasure Pavilion. Sky Treasure Pavilion will set up branch stores in the town of cities where cultivators gather. Most of them are situated in the cities of the various states where the kings live in. Sky Treasure Pavilion? Su Zimo said in slight puzzlement. He frowned. There seems to be one in Kanglang City. When he was studying at Kanglang City previously, Su Zimo had unintentionally heard of Sky Treasure Pavilion. He heard that it was a place that was even more mysterious than the palace. The gathering of the cultivators? Kanglang City, Sky Treasure Pavilion? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes, seemingly pondering about something. Since they are cultivators, why would they intervene in pugilistic and royal court affairs of the mortal world? Su Zimo asked again. Yarrow Shui explained, the chi refinement warrior's lifespan is almost similar to that of ordinary people. Even a foundation establishment cultivator's lifespan is at most over 100 years. It is so hard to attain alchemy. When they see that they have no hopes of attaining alchemy, most of the chi refinement warriors and foundation establishment cultivators will enter the royal court and enjoy a materialistic and carefree life in their remaining years. Of course, when there are traces of cultivators in various states, most of them belong to the chi refinement warriors. However, it is said that in the Great Zhou dynasty, one of the armies is solely formed by the foundation establishment cultivators, and there are even some perfected golden cores in the dynasty. This is the reason why the Great Zhou dynasty stands towering like a giant and dominates the various state. Countries such as Dachi and Yang all belong to the vassal states and had to pay tribute to the Great Zhou dynasty every year. Su Zimo suddenly had a realization. It is no wonder the Great Zhou dynasty hardly intervenes in the battles of the various states. This is because the rise and fall of any states will not threaten the rule of the Great Zhou dynasty. That's right. Yarrow Shui nodded. After pausing for a moment, Yarrow Shui smiled and said in a profound manner, the Kanglang City is one of the cities in the state, but Sky Treasure Pavilion set up a branch there. It seems that the city lord of this city is conceiving a huge plan. Sky Treasure Pavilion would only set up a branch in places where the cultivators gather. This implied that Kanglang City had many cultivators. What did the city lord of Kanglang want to do? Was it related to the Su family? Su Zimo vaguely felt that the Su family had very likely gotten itself into a massive vortex, and it would be shattered into pieces in the event of any slip-up. Chapter 24, Sky Treasure Gold Badge. Chapter 24, Sky Treasure Gold Badge. Coincidentally, I also wanted to go to the Sky Treasure Pavilion to trade for something. Where is Kanglang City? Bring me there, please. Yarrow Shui said smilingly. Su Zimo could tell that Yarrow Shui was very sensitive and considerate. She was worried that he could not enter the Sky Treasure Pavilion on his own as he was not a chi refinement warrior. As such, she told him that for fear of hurting his self-esteem. Su Zimo did not expose her lie either. He said, let's go. It is also time that I leave Kanglang Mountain Range. Su Zimo packed up many spirit beast hides. Besides these, he also put away the storage bags and flying swords harvested yesterday in Yarrow Shui's storage bag temporarily to avoid appearing too ostentatious. Outside the cave, the sky was already bright. The spirit monkey curled himself up in a corner with his back facing the two of them. It seemed to be sound asleep. Let's go. Don't disturb him. Yarrow Shui said softly. Su Zimo shook his head. He went to the side of the spirit monkey and kicked it without giving any warning. He chided smilingly, "Stop pretending to be dead. Wake up and send me off." This kick was very sudden and forceful. Even Yarrow Shui was taken aback. Unexpectedly, the spirit monkey who was initially sleeping soundly seemed to be long prepared for this. Swoosh! It dashed up and avoided Su Zimo's underhanded kick. Teeth gnashing and jaws opened, it waved both arms at Su Zimo with a face full of disdain, and rolled its eyes from time to time. Su Zimo smiled faintly and said, "If you don't want to send me off, so be it. Look at you. Damn monkey. Be smarter next time. Don't foolishly go lose to the cultivators when you meet them." Humph. The spirit monkey snorted and waved its fists. "I'm leaving." With his back facing the spirit monkey, Su Zimo waved his hands and left the cave with Yarrow Shui. Not far away, Su Zimo sensed something and instinctively turned back. He saw the spirit monkey standing at the cave entrance and watching him from afar. Under the reflection of the morning glow, the tall and big figure looked a little lonely and desolate. At the sight of Su Zimo turning back, the spirit monkey felt that he could no longer stifle his expression. Lifting its head proudly, it turned and wriggled back into the cave, disappearing from sight. Yarrow Shui noticed this and said softly, "In the end, it came out to send you off." Su Zimo hung his head silently. Yarrow Shui said, "Since you can't bear to leave it, bring it along." After a moment of silence, Su Zimo looked up and smiled. Pretending to be casual, he said, "It's okay. Don't need to bother about him. This monkey has great ambitions. It wants to be the lord of Kanglang mountain range, a happy and carefree king of the mountains." Yarrow Shui found a flying sword from the storage bag and suspended it in the air. She jumped onto it. She then turned to Su Zimo and said, "Come up. It'll be faster in this way." Su Zimo did not decline. He leaped onto the flying sword immediately. Swoosh! Lights from the sword flashed. The two had already disappeared from the place that they were at lightning speed. Sword Kinnis's flight was as graceful and swift as a startled swan. It was breezy, carefree, and indescribable. Su Zimo would be lying to himself if he were to say that he was not envious. However, he was on the path of demon cultivation. He would have to cultivate the core formation section to rise from the ground and fly in the air. After Tendon's transformation, there were 4 major realms: bones strengthening, marrow cleansing, organs refinement, and orifice clearing. He did not know how long it would take. After 1.5 years, he felt completely different upon returning to Kanglang City. Looking at Kanglang City from the heights while on Yarrow Shui's sword, Su Zimo discovered that this city was much bigger than he had thought it to be. The two landed in a quiet and deep small alley. There was a wall at the end of the small alley. Before Yarrow Shui reached the wall, she pointed with her finger and released a flow of spirit chi. Before hitting the wall, it had turned as clear as a water curtain at that instant. Yarrow Shui explained, "This is a kind of array formation. It has the effect of a visual bulwark. Mortals without spirit chi will not be able to discover this place. There are 2 ways to enter the Sky Treasure Pavilion. First, become a cultivator. Second, possess the Sky Treasure Badge." Su Zimo nodded and followed Yarrow Shui in crossing the wall. It was spacious and bright on the other side. A sparkling and glittering palace appeared right in front of them. 3 words Sky Treasure Pavilion was written on the plaque. Under the bottom right corner of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, there was an exquisite and small word branch, representing that this was a store branch of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. After entering the main hall of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, one could see many chi refinement warriors loitering around. The main hall was filled with plenty of treasures collected in the cultivation world. There were elixirs, spirit items, talismans, cultivation technique secret manuals, and so on. It had everything that one wished for. "Follow me upstairs. These items downstairs are all ordinary ones," Yarrow Shui whispered. Under the envious gaze of many chi refinement warriors, Su Zimo followed Yarrow Shui upstairs. These Qi refinement warriors were aware that only Foundation establishment cultivators or those with the Sky Treasure badge could be granted access to the second floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, it was too difficult to attain a Sky Treasure badge. Even the most inferior grade Sky Treasure Bronze badge required a certain number of spirit stones in exchange for the eligibility. On the second floor, there were obviously less cultivation world treasures. However, each of the items looked better than those downstairs. Apart from a few Qi refinement warriors who were selling items, no one else was present. It was very quiet. Yarrow Shui knocked on the table. She flashed a piece of exquisite, gold badge and said in a low voice, "Get your pavilion manager out." The Qi refinement warrior was startled instantly. He responded to the rudeness with a flattering smile. "Senior, please wait here for a moment." Very soon, a figure dressed like a businessman hurried over. He was rather plump but swift in his movements. "Selling something?" Yarrow Shui went straight to the point. She took out the hundreds of spirit beast hides, various elixirs, and the few flying swords. Su Zimo had already planned to sell everything and exchange them for spirit stones. It will be a total of 3,070 pieces of inferior grade spirit stones. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion calculated before he wiped his sweat and said. Yarrow Shui waved her hands and said undoubtedly. "Let's round it to 3,100. This, okay." The manager hesitated slightly but agreed thereafter. Su Zimo suddenly realized that Yarrow Shui seemed to be born of an extraordinary origin. Every move of hers was filled with a strong aura of elegance. 3,100 pieces of spirit stones. Coupled with the 700 other pieces in the storage bags of the Joyful Seven, Su Zimo had close to 4,000 spirit stones now. This was also considered a huge wealth amongst the high-level Qi refinement warriors. "How do you intend to use this sum of spirit stones?" Yarrow Shui asked. Su Zimo had some plans in his heart. He said in a deep voice, "I want to refine 2 weapons. 1 bow and 1 saber." After the battle with Qi refinement warriors at Kanglang Mountain Range, Su Zimo discovered his own weakness. He was unable to leave the ground and fly in the sky. If he were to encounter Qi refinement warriors who used sword kinesis flight in the future, Su Zimo would deal with them with his bow and arrows. As for the saber, apart from protecting himself and attacking the enemy, it could also block the spirit item of the Qi refinement warrior and take the chance to reduce the distance separating them. Besides inferior grade, middle grade, superior grade, supreme grade weapons, there was also another type of spirit weapon called pseudo-spirit weapon. The reasons why spirit weapons were powerful were twofold. On one hand, the materials used to refine the weapons were rare spirit items. On the other hand, after numerous hammering and refining by the weapon refinement master, the impurities had been removed. The weapon would not break easily as it was both hard and strong. Most importantly, one had to look at the spirit pattern condensed on it to analyze the grade of the spirit weapon. An inferior grade spirit weapon would have 1 spirit pattern. Amongst the Joyful Seven, 2 of them had flying swords of this grade. The flying sword in Yarrow Shui's hands was a middle-grade spirit weapon as it had 2 spirit patterns. Weapons with 3 spirit patterns were superior grade while those with 4 spirit patterns were of supreme grade. Before the cultivators engaged in a fight, it would inject the spirit qi into the spirit weapon. This would invigorate the spirit pattern to shine. The more lines there were, the more powerful the spirit weapon. The so-called pseudo-spirit weapon was referring to weapons made of the same materials as the real ones. They were also made by the weapon refinement master, but there was no spirit pattern condensed on them. To Su Zimo, whether the weapons had spirit pattern or not did not make a difference. He could not invigorate them at all. As long as the weapon was strong and hard enough to block the impact of spirit weapons and cause death and injury to the Qi refinement warrior, it would suffice. The manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion said, "It costs very little to refine 2 pseudo-spirit weapons. Including the costs of materials and hiring the weapon refinement master, a few hundred inferior-grade spirit stones are enough. How long will it take?" Su Zimo could feel that the Su family was going to face a calamity soon. He wanted to improve his ability as soon as possible. At least 3 days. the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said. On a separate note, it is easy to refine the bow but not the bowstring. Yarrow Shwe pointed at Su Zimo's waist and smiled gently. The python tendon on your waist can be used as a bowstring. Su Zimo was still clad in a beast hide and a python tendon was used as a belt. Yarrow Shwe reached out her hands and gently pushed Su Zimo, covering her nose. Quickly bathe and change your clothes. You can remove the python tendon then. Su Zimo coughed lightly to conceal his embarrassment. He quickly followed the two female waiting staff and left the second floor of Sky Treasure Pavilion temporarily. Not long after, Su Zimo returned to the Sky Treasure Pavilion. When Yarrow Shwe glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, she could not help feeling stunned. At this moment, Su Zimo was dressed in a green robe. He had shaved away his stubble. Bright, clear eyes and delicate features, he exuded a strong scholarly aura. He was like a different person from before. "Hey, who is this?" Yarrow Shwe turned both her palms, leaned forward slightly and moved closer to him. She tilted her head and asked with a trace of a smile in her eyes. Su Zimo's gaze was bright and clear. He smiled but was silent. "A young master, indeed. Addressing you as young Master Su is really not wrong." Yarrow Shwe smiled and said. Su Zimo could barely endure this. He cupped his fists and said, "Miss Yarrow Shwe, you're being humorous. All right, I'll not tease you anymore." Yarrow Shwe waved her hands and asked, "What do you intend to use the remaining spirit stones for? How many spirit stones do I need to hire a chi refinement warrior?" Su Zimo planned to hire one chi refinement warrior to protect the Su family. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said, "This depends on the level that the chi refinement warrior is at. The higher the better. For a level 7 chi refinement warrior, 5 pieces of inferior grade spirit stones a day will be enough. For a level 8 chi refinement warrior, you need 10 pieces a day. For a level 9 chi refinement warrior, you need 100 pieces." Su Zimo did some mental calculations. He had a total of over 3,000 pieces of spirit stones left. Of course, it was good to hire a level 9 chi refinement warrior. However, he only had enough spirit stones to hire one of them for a month. No one could guarantee when the danger would come. On the other hand, hiring a level 8 chi refinement warrior could protect the Su family for an entire year. It was relatively more cost-effective. After pondering deeply for a while, Su Zimo said, "I'll hire a level 8 chi refinement warrior for a period of 1 year." "Okay." The manager waved his hands. One of the female waiting staff nodded and walked towards the main hall on the first floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. Yarrow Shwe explained. "There are always new missions at the main hall of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. If the chi refinement warriors are interested in them, they will look for the hirers accordingly." After pausing for a while, Yarrow Shwe passed the piece of gold badge in her hands to Su Zimo. She said, "This is the Sky Treasure Pavilion gold badge. With this badge, you can get half the price for every item of purchase when you come here next time." "So much?" Su Zimo was shocked. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion, who was standing at the side, explained, "There are 3 types of badges in the Sky Treasure Pavilion. The lowest grade is the bronze badge, which will give you a 10% discount. Next is the silver badge that gives a 20% discount, followed by the gold badge. This item is too precious and costly. I can't accept it." Upon hearing the manager's explanation, how could Su Zimo not know how precious this gold badge was? "Accept it. I still have more of it." Not allowing any further deliberations, Yarrow Shwe tucked the item into Su Zimo's arms and reminded him, "You have to hide it well and don't let anyone see it. Otherwise, you will attract trouble easily." Su Zimo frowned and wanted to decline again. Yarrow Shwe's face turned stiff. "You saved my life. Isn't my life worth this piece of lousy gold badge?" Su Zimo was speechless. The manager at the side rolled his eyes continuously, muttering in his heart, "Lousy gold badge. There are less than 10 such gold badges in the entire Great Ju dynasty. This madam is so generous. I don't know where this poor lad's good fortune came from." At this moment, Su Zimo was unaware that the Sky Treasure gold badge in his hands was not an ordinary one. Even if he had the ordinary Sky Treasure gold badge, he could only get a 30% discount at the Sky Treasure Pavilion. There was only one place with Sky Treasure Gold badges that could give a 50% discount. Chapter 25, Trouble. Chapter 25, Trouble. After stepping out of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, it was already close to noon. Su Zimo turned and looked at Yarrow Shuer. He said sincerely, "I must thank Miss Yarrow Shuer for today's matter. Call me Yarrow Shuer." That. Okay then. Su Zimo hesitated slightly before he agreed. At the sight of Su Zimo nodding, Yarrow Shuer pursed her lips and smiled. She said immediately, "I'll call you Zimo then." Su Zimo. Yarrow Shuer took a sideways glance at Su Zimo and asked, "Where will Zimo be going next?" Su Zimo pondered deeply and said, "I have to stay in Kanglang City for a few days to wait for the 2 spirit weapons to be refined. At the same time, I will check out if any level 8 Chi refinement warriors are taking up the mission." After thinking, Yarrow Shuer said, "I'll return to my clan then. I won't keep you company. Have a good trip. We will meet again if we have fate." Su Zimo nodded. Yarrow Shuer jumped onto the flying sword. When she was about to leave the Sky Treasure Pavilion, she suddenly looked back and gave a charming smile. "Not if we have fate. We will definitely meet again." Upon finishing her words, Yarrow Shuer leaped onto her sword and left. She disappeared from Su Zimo's sight soon after. Su Zimo did not think much of it. He left the small alley of the Sky Treasure Pavilion and looked for an inn nearby to stay at. 3 days later, in the mansion of the city lord, Cao Gang, the wolf guard, stepped in and bowed to pay his respects. He said in a low voice, "City lord, my subordinate's guard saw Su Zimo in the city. The strange thing is that this lad seemed to have appeared out of thin air. No one saw him entering the city." Luo Tianwu, the city lord of Kanglang City, nodded and said, "Yes, perhaps we have been negligent. No need to worry. I have long received news of this and sent someone to test him. Since we are making use of him to kill, we have to test if this blade is sharp enough. I heard that, some time ago, Su Hong had a narrow escape from death in the capital of the country of Yang. 16 years of preparation work fell short in the last battle. He nearly lost his life. Now, the capital of the country of Yang is tightly guarded. Many Chi refinement warriors were gathered near the king of Yang. What can this Su Zimo do?" Cao Gang frowned slightly. Luo Tianwu smiled and said, "Su Hong has black armored cavalry under his wings. He was powerful but also too ambitious. It is expected that his assassination of the king of Yang would fail. But this second young master Su is different. No one views him as a threat. The more you neglect one's existence, the easier it is for him to carry out a successful assassination." Su Zimo had been in Kanglang City for 3 days but did not hear any news from Sky Treasure Pavilion. The hiring of Chi refinement warrior was not as easy as he expected it to be. Furthermore, he wanted to hire a level 8 Chi refinement warrior. Su Zimo felt a little vexed. He was prepared to have a meal at the first floor of the inn. Just as he arrived downstairs, he could hear people sneering. Someone said in an eccentric manner, "Yo, isn't this second young master Su who has been reduced to an inferior commoner? Why do you still have the shame to come to Kanglang City?" Su Zimo slanted his eyes and saw a seemingly wealthy young man with a graceful bearing waving a fan. Sneering continuously, he had a look of contempt on his face. 2 middle-aged men were by his sides. They were bright-eyed and had a restrained aura. They were seemingly guarding the young man who was sitting in between them. This young man's name was Chu Liang. He could not take the hardship of learning martial arts but was also reluctant to focus on his studies quietly. With the power of his family clan as his backing, he lounged around all day long, bullying the young and weak. Su Zimo had some impression of this man as he had been his classmate back then when studying in Kanglang City previously. Although he could not see eye to eye with this man's conduct, the two never had any animosity between them. Su Zimo cast a faint glance at Chu Liang. His gaze was calm and his expression normal. He then turned back and ascended the stairs. The Su family already had enemies on another land. Su Zimo did not wish to attract more trouble. It was pointless to make more enemies. Chu Liang sneered. Boss Lee, when did your inn start to take in inferior commoners? Break both legs of this inferior commoner and throw him out, in case he affects my appetite. This. The boss of the inn looked like he was in a difficult position. Yes. You want to break both my legs? Suzimo halted his steps and turned gradually, his gaze sweeping across the main lobby. The guests in the inn did not seem to be ordinary commoners. They had weapons on the table beside them. Although they were also eating and drinking, their gazes inadvertently landed on him. Moreover, there were traces of hostility in their eyes. This was not a chance encounter. The other party deliberately came here to seek trouble. In the blink of an eye, Suzimo had figured it out. Suzimo strode towards Chu Liang. The two middle-aged men by Chu Liang's side showed obvious signs of nervousness. The muscles tightened as they lowered their palms, placed them on the weapon on the waist. Suzimo smiled and sat on the seat opposite Chu Liang. Who told you to sit down? Chu Liang hollered. Bang! He slammed his hands on the table. Clang! One after another, the surrounding diners rose from their seats, unsheathing their weapons. Suzimo's expression was unchanged. Without looking sideways, he did not seem bothered as he took Chu Liang's wine jar and poured himself a cup of wine. The two middle-aged men opposite him looked grave and solemn. They moved towards the middle, blocking Chu Liang behind them. Suzimo had not made any moves and did not even reveal any trace of murderous aura. Yet, the two middle-aged men felt uneasy and had chills running up their spines. The two of you are perfected carnate experts, right? Suzimo lifted the wine cup and asked casually. So what if we are? One of them responded. The two of you. Suzimo raised his head and drained the strong wine in his cup. He then shook his head. He continued to say, won't be able to protect him. The moment he put down the wine cup, Suzimo made his move. Snap! The wine cup dropped on the tabletop. The fall was neither hard nor soft, but the entire table suddenly split open. Suzimo closed in and flipped his palms, enshrouding the top of heads of the two perfected carnate experts. His moves were sudden and he attacked two people at the same time. The two middle-aged men were terrified. The aura of Suzimo's palm strike was powerful and suffocating. They could even smell a gust of bloody stench at the wave of his palm. In the blink of an eye, the graceful scholar had transformed into a man-eating beast. The two men unsheathed their weapons immediately to block the attack. Swoosh! There was a deafening and crisp sound. Two extremely sharp weapons had actually been slammed to pieces by Suzimo's palm. They were scattered on the ground. Bang! Bang! Suzimo moved forward and kicked both his legs casually. The two carnate experts were hurled outside. Horror filled their eyes. Their chests were crushed and they were vomiting fresh blood. They were almost dead. In comparison to the spirit beasts in Kanglang mountain range, the close combat techniques of the two men before him were really too poor. If Suzimo were to use all of his strength, the two of them including their weapons would be crushed instantly with the pressure of this palm. Chu Liang was so scared that his face was drained of all colors. Never did he expect that the two carnate experts that he relied on most would turn invalid in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, Suzimo was already nearing him. Suzimo grabbed his neck and lifted him up in the air. It was too fast. When Chu Liang landed in Suzimo's hands, the surrounding diners had not even recovered from their shock. No matter how much they wanted to dash forward, they were fearful of the consequences and full of reservations. What are you doing? Release my family's young master. A loud and stern voice rang from the surrounding. Suzimo did not seem to have heard it. He just looked at Chu Liang with an imperceptible smile on his face. I heard that you want to break both of my legs. Ee. Chu Liang's neck was strangled. His face turned purplish-blue as he let out a weird sound from his mouth. Suzimo's gaze gradually turned cold. He swung his legs. Pa. Pa. Sounds of bones cracking could be heard coming from Chu Liang's knees. They had been crushed by Suzimo's kick in that instant. Chu Liang was in so much pain that beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His entire body was shivering, but he could not bring himself to say a word. Who told you to come? Suzimo pressed him. Chu Liang could not catch his breath. He rolled his eyes and looked like he was going to faint at any point in time. At this very moment, a loud shout could be heard from outside the door. "Stop!" A man clad in armor with a firm and resolute face was standing at the entrance of the inn. He was leading numerous guards. He dashed in with large and vigorous strides. This man was none other than Cao Gang, one of the 5 wolf guards of Kanglang City. "Fighting is forbidden in the city. Su Zimo, quickly release that man." Cao Gang stepped forward and hollered. At the same time, Cao Gang also moved forward 2 steps and whispered into Su Zimo's ears. "Second young Master Su, the city lord would like to meet you." Su Zimo narrowed both his eyes. A thought flashed in his mind and he vaguely understood what was happening. Su Zimo waved his hands and flung Chu Liang aside nonchalantly. "Bring criminal Su Zimo back to the city lord." Cao Gang shouted again. Numerous guards behind him moved forward and surrounded Su Zimo. Yet, no one cuffed him up. Su Zimo was expressionless, but he sneered in his heart. He followed Cao Gang and the group and left the inn. Chapter 26, Heard about the secret. Chapter 26, Heard about the secret. This was the first meeting between Su Zimo and the city lord of Kanglang City. It was very difficult to read the city lord's mind just by looking into his eyes. He was expressionless and seemingly very deep and scheming. Luo Tianwu was also sizing up Su Zimo at the same time. His first impression of Su Zimo was a cultured and polite man, no different from other scholars. If he had not known in advance the many deeds of Su Zimo in Pingyang town, it was very hard for Luo Tianwu to imagine that such a weak and frail-looking scholar could actually subdue the Too Big family clan. Immediately after, he sensed that Su Zimo was mysterious and unfathomable. The gazes of both parties collided in mid-air. Very soon after, Luo Tianwu revealed a smile first. He said in a loud and clear voice, "I've long heard about the famous second young Master Su. We finally meet today. Please have a seat." From the side, a slouching old servant dressed in a grey robe walked over. Grey-haired, he had a gaunt face and cloudy eyes. He carried a chair and put it carefully in front of Su Zimo. Su Zimo's gaze seemed casual as it swept across the old servant. He did not decline and took the seat immediately. Luo Tianwu was very polite to him. However, there was more to this case and it became more evident that this meeting was not so simple. There must be something going on when things occur out of the ordinary. What was the status, power, and prestige of a city lord? Luo Tianwu had never invited Su Zimo when the latter attained scholarly honors previously, much less his inferior status currently. The grey-robed old servant stood beside Su Zimo and filled a cup of tea for Su Zimo respectfully. Su Zimo's thoughts were deep as he cast a profound gaze at the grey-robed old servant. With an imperceptible smile, he said, "You served me tea. This must have been hard on you." The grey-robed old servant paused for a moment. He placed the teapot on the table without any expression. Thereafter, he retreated to stand behind Luo Tianwu and did not utter a word. Upon hearing this, a beam of light flashed across Luo Tianwu's eyes but disappeared after a moment. Su Zimo's words seemed unintentional, but others were not sure of the implied meaning. He could be mocking himself for his inferior status or pitying the grey-robed old servant for his old age. Of course, there was another possibility. This lad had already seen through the Qi refinement warrior identity of this old servant dressed in shabby and grey clothes. This fellow is not easy to deal with. Luo Tianwu furrowed his brows secretly. The grey-robed old servant had hid himself very well. Yet, he could not deceive the spirit perception that Su Zimo had attained via his near-death experiences. Without a word, Su Zimo raised his teacup and sipped tea in a leisurely manner. Luo Tianwu was silent too. His fingertips were knocking on the table neither lightly nor hard. About 8 minutes passed. The pin-drop silence in the room was frightening. Only sounds of fingertips knocking on the table were resonating. The atmosphere was stifling. The smile on Luo Tianwu's face had already disappeared. In such a circumstance, ordinary people would not be able to withstand the pressure. They would have long spoken up to ease the atmosphere. However, right from the beginning, Su Zimo's expression did not change the slightest bit. His gaze was as calm as an old monk who was meditating. This lad is only 18 years old and he has such a calm and mature temperament. It is very tricky to deal with him, Luo Tianwu muttered in his heart. He was already feeling a little restless. In actual fact, this was a tactic of psychological pressure. Whoever could not endure the situation and spoke would inevitably be on the back foot. Luo Tianwu had initially wanted to subdue Su Zimo in the first instance. However, he did not expect to hit him on the wrong spot. He felt very upset. "Isn't second young master Su curious about why I invited you today?" Luo Tianwu asked smilingly. Su Zimo put down his teacup in a leisurely manner and glanced sideways at Luo Tianwu. He said calmly, "May I ask City Lord to give me an explicit reason? The two young masters of the Su family are both cream of the crop. Young Master Su's patience and endurance, and second young Master Su hiding your light under a bushel. The 5 wolf guards under my wings and me admire you guys greatly," Luo Tianwu praised. Su Zimo frowned slightly and said, "City Lord, you don't need to probe further. Please come straight to the point. You're straightforward. I admire people like second young Master Su." Luo Tianwu gave a slight smile. "Your older brother has failed to assassinate the King of Yang. He is severely injured and bedridden now. I know that second young Master Su's heart must be filled with fury." Upon hearing this, Su Zimo's countenance changed. Older brother assassinated the King of Yang? He was injured. Su Zimo had not returned for a year. Hence, he did not know that such a severe matter had happened to the Su family. Why did older brother assassinate the King of Yang? Could the King of Yang be the Su family's enemy? Observing the change in Su Zimo's expression, Luo Tianwu was slightly stunned. He asked, "Don't tell me that second young Master Su doesn't know about this." "I am not aware." Su Zimo shook his head and endured the urge to rush back to Pingyang town. Luo Tianwu felt that he had regained some victory with this. He revealed a slight smile and said, "Actually, I still admire and respect Su Mu, Lord Wuding, the most." How powerful and prestigious were the black-armored cavalry under his wings then? Which of the surrounding states doesn't know the famous Su Mu? It is sheer pity. Su Mu. Upon hearing this name, for some unknown reason, Su Zimo seemingly felt pangs of pain in his heart. Su Zimo had already sensed that this man called Su Mu was very likely his father. He only heard Luo Tianwu continuing with his words, 16 years ago, we heard that Su Mu had been framed and schemed against by villains. The King of Yang gave orders to annihilate his entire family. At that time, I was also wringing my fists in sorrow and pain. I mourned for the loss of an outstanding hero. Fortunately, Lord Wuding's bloodline is still inexistent. The two young masters of the Su family escaped. Upon hearing this, Su Zimo already understood in his heart. He had found the answers to many of his doubts. Without a word, Su Zimo's lanky body rose and headed outside. "Where is second young Master Su going?" Luo Tianwu asked quickly. Su Zimo's face was solemn. He turned and looked at Luo Tianwu. Visible red veins could be seen in his eyes. It was extremely frightening. Luo Tianwu was stunned. The grey-robed old man behind him moved a step back instinctively. He slipped his hands into his chest and searched the storage bag inside. In fact, Luo Tianwu did not know that Su Zimo was unaware of the Su family's background. He did not expect that Su Zimo would react so greatly. Luo Tianwu calmed himself down and took a deep breath. He said in a deep voice, "I know that second young Master Su is keen to take revenge. I also wish to seek justice for Lord Wuding. Why don't we do this? I have spies in the city where the King of Yang lives in. I can try my best to help second young Master Su get close to the King of Yang. With second young Master Su's capability, we will definitely be able to execute the King of Yang and avenge Lord Wuding if we join forces." Su Zimo shut his eyes. After some time, he gradually opened them. The blood color in his eyes slowly faded and his eyes regained brightness and clarity. "This is a private vendetta of the Su family. Why should I bother the city lord?" Su Zimo asked. Luo Tianwu smiled and said, "Lord Wuding is the person that I admire most in my life. You can only deceive children with such words. Before Luo Tianwu could finish his words, Su Zimo interrupted him ruthlessly. Su Zimo's words were considered a great form of disrespect for the city lord. However, the smile on Luo Tianwu's face did not lessen. He continued to say, "Second young master Su is a little angered. You're the one who sent Chu Liang to the inn, right?" Su Zimo interrupted Luo Tianwu again and said calmly. Luo Tianwu retracted his smile. There was a flash of murderous intent in his eyes, but it disappeared a moment later. He questioned back, "What makes second young master Su say that? From the moment that I made the first move till I subdued Chu Liang, it only took a duration of 10 breaths. Su Zimo pointed to Cao Gang at the side and added, "Guard Cao suddenly dashed in. It's a little too fast." It was as if this had been prearranged. I only happened to pass by," Cao Gang explained hurriedly. Luo Tianwu waved his hands to stop Cao Gang from continuing with his words. It was just a short interaction, and Luo Tianwu realized that this kind of small tricks could not deceive the person before him. To force an explanation would only make a joke out of themselves. Su Zimo gave a sneer and turned back. He paused his steps when he reached the doorsteps and said calmly, "If City Lord Luo is sincere in helping the Su family, I, Su Zimo, will naturally be grateful to you. However, I don't like to be made use of by others. City Lord Luo, you better watch your conduct." Having finished his words, Su Zimo left without even turning back. When Su Zimo's figure disappeared from the residence of the City Lord, Luo Tianwu's expression turned solemn and sinister. There was already a handprint on the sandalwood table beside him. This green and young lad. He actually dared to be so arrogant in front of me. Luo Tianwu was enraged. He gritted his teeth and scolded. After some time, Luo Tianwu gave a long sigh. He turned and asked, "Sir, how do you feel about this lad?" At this moment, the grey-robed old servant straightened his back. His eyes were clear and bright. There were no signs of the earlier old and fatigued look. When he heard Luo Tianwu's question, he said in a deep voice, "Second young master Su is not simple. Although he is not a Qi refinement warrior, he could see through my identity as a Qi refinement warrior with one glance. This lad's hands are certainly stained with a lot of fresh blood. When he was angered earlier, I could feel trepidation in my heart. He is a very dangerous man." "Oh." Luo Tianwu raised his brows slightly. He asked again, "What will happen if you fight with him?" The grey-robed old servant's expression was proud. He said, "I am a level 8 Qi refinement warrior. How can a mortal compete with me?" However, after pausing for a while, the grey-robed old servant changed his stance. Given this lad's temperament and ability, he has a high chance of success in assassinating the King of Yang. As to whether he could escape the capital alive. The grey-robed old servant smiled but did not speak a word. "I am not concerned whether he can escape the capital where the King of Yang lives at. As long as the King of Yang is dead, the country will become leaderless and there will certainly be chaos. It will be the best time for me to invade the city and declare myself as the king." Luo Tianwu smiled. Everything was under his control. Chapter 27, Sanguine Crystal Bow, Cold Moon Saber. Chapter 27, Sanguine Crystal Bow, Cold Moon Saber. Men of letters preferred swords. Even if they did not know any martial arts, they liked to carry a sword with them, as they appeared to be noble and elegant with it. The saber was used by the armies on the battlefield and the ruffians of the pugilistic society. It was totally unlike the aura of the scholar. When choosing his weapons at Sky Treasure Pavilion, Su Zimo did not choose the sword but the saber automatically. He did not know the reason behind his actions as well. Su Zimo finally understood why when he left the mansion of the city lord. That was because he was no scholar deep down inside. He was the son of the mighty Lord Wuding, that all the dukes were in or of. He should be galloping on the battlefield, killing countless enemies with his fearless and indomitable spirit, blood staining his robe. Originally, Su Zimo could not understand why he was not the least nervous, scared or frightened when the knife that he held pierced Zhu Dingyun's throat that night. Instead, He was slightly excited and eager to try. Su Zimo finally understood everything right now. It was in his blood to kill without the slightest hesitation. Although he had spent more than 10 years studying, he could not hide his true nature. The words that Luo Tianwu said were like sharp thorns that pierced Su Zimo's heart. He was in agony at hearing them. His older brother was seriously injured. How was he doing? Was he in a critical state? Was Xiaoning frightened out of her wits at the calamity that befell the Su family? Upon passing by the inn that he stayed temporarily last time, Su Zimo chanced upon the unique mark made by Sky Treasure Pavilion. Could it be that the two pseudo-spirit weapons have been refined? Su Zimo hesitated slightly before heading to Sky Treasure Pavilion. When he reached the end of the alley, the walls sensed his Sky Treasure gold badge. It turned transparent as water instantly, and Su Zimo walked right through it. Upon reaching Sky Treasure Pavilion, Su Zimo did not stop but continued to go upstairs. There were many Qi refinement warriors at the main hall. Many of them turned to look at Su Zimo with a searing and examining gaze. The atmosphere in the main hall was strange. There was a detection skill in the cultivation world. Therefore, all the Qi refinement warriors present could tell that there was no spirit Qi within Su Zimo, yet he was able to reach the second level of Sky Treasure Pavilion. There was only one explanation for that: Su Zimo had Sky Treasure Badge with him. With the Sky Treasure Badge, one could be given a 10% discount when making purchases in Sky Treasure Pavilion. This was very tempting. When Su Zimo went to Sky Treasure Pavilion for the first time, he had Yarrow Shui, a Foundation Establishment cultivator, with him. Therefore, nobody dared to have any designs on it. But now that it was Su Zimo who had the Sky Treasure Badge, it was tantamount to a 3-year-old kid who walked around with a gold brick. He was immortal, yet he had the Sky Treasure Badge. He must have come from an illustrious family. Although many of the Qi refinement warriors were tempted, they gave up the idea of snatching the Sky Treasure Badge, as they did not want to court death. However, there were still exceptions. A man's wealth was his own ruin by causing another's greed. There would always be someone who was willing to take the risk in the face of great temptation. A pair of cold eyes trailed after Su Zimo from the corner of the main hall. It followed him all the way to the end of the staircase. Su Zimo had something on his mind, therefore he did not notice the fleeting malicious gaze at the main hall. As soon as Su Zimo reached the second floor, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion stood up to welcome him with a big smile on his face. Young Master Su is finally here. The two pseudo-spirit weapons have been refined. Come and have a look. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion slapped on his storage bag, and one long saber and a longbow floated right in front of Su Zimo. There were 12 sharp arrows as well. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said, "The cold moon saber is about 3 feet long, it has a silver blade, and a thick and sharp razor edge, suitable for slashing and killing. It is mainly made up of rare spiritual items. We have added 10 types of hard materials including 7 stars gravel and golden light rocks to cast the saber in accordance with your requirements. Although it had no spirit pattern, it can withstand the impact made from middle-grade spirit weapons, and it would still be good as ever." Su Zimo nodded, reaching toward the long saber that floated in the air. Just then, there was a look of mockery in the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion's eyes. He was waiting for Su Zimo to make a fool of himself. Su Zimo asked that the pseudo-spirit weapons to be as heavy as possible. The cold moon saber weighed close to 500 kilograms. Given his level 9 weapon refinement cultivation realm, he could barely handle the spirit weapon with his spirit chi. It was impossible to kill the enemy with such a weapon. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion believed that the moment Su Zimo took the saber, it would crush his feet. However, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion was dumbstruck the next moment. Su Zimo took Cold Moon Saber easily in his hands. He even tried a few strokes with it. It was as light as a feather to him. He nodded and said, "The saber is pretty good. It is just that it is still quite light." The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion. What kind of monster is this man? He has no spirit chi, but he could handle the weapon that weighed 500 kilograms with his physical strength. The most annoying part is that he finds it too light. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion rolled his eyes. This is Sanguine Crystal Bow. Take it. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion could not be bothered to go into details. He was in no mood to explain to him. The sanguine crystal bow was bloody red and there was a crystal clear luster to it. It was as if blood was flowing in the bow, exuding a strange aura. It weighed as heavy as the cold moon saber. Suzimo slanted the sanguine crystal bow over his body, while he tied the quiver on his back, putting the 12 sharp arrows into the quiver. He tied the cold moon saber at his waist. He was all ready. By the way, young Master Su, we have found someone suitable regarding your hiring notice. However, the person is somewhat different from your requirements, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said.
Oh.
He is Song Chi, a level 7 Chi refinement warrior. According to him, if you are willing to pay him with some spirit stones in advance, he could reach level 8 Chi condensation. Of course, if you don't agree, I can say no to his request. He did not know how long he had to wait before a level 8 Chi refinement warrior could take on the assignment. Su Hong was seriously injured, he had no idea of his condition. Now that the Su family had suffered such misfortunes, Su Zimo intended to rush back to Pingyang town immediately. He had no time to wait. Tell him to come. I would like to meet him, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion brought someone with him in no time. He was a Chi refinement warrior in his 40s. He looked handsome and composed. This is young Master Su. You can talk to him regarding your requests. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion stood to the side after finishing the introductions. Upon seeing Su Zimo, Song Chi did not look down on him or flatter him. He cupped his fists and said, "Young Master Su." Su Zimo asked, "Are you in a hurry to use spirit stones?" "Yes. If I have sufficient spirit stones, I will be able to get through level 8 Chi condensation." Song Chi nodded. "How long will it take?" "Well, I can't say for sure. Nobody can tell you the exact timing to break through a realm." Song Chi was being very frank. Su Zimo had a good first impression of the man. He was silent before he asked, "Since you are lacking spirit stones, why don't you join a clan? I am a pseudo-spirit root. No major clans are willing to accept me. Even if they accept me, they will only treat me as a servant." Song Chi smiled bitterly. A pseudo-spirit root was the worst spirit root. It contained the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. It would absorb a mixture of spirit chi. It was impure and one's cultivation speed was very slow. There were also spirit roots that only contained one element, for example metal spirit root, wood spirit root and fire spirit root. It was akin to the legendary heaven spirit root. It could take in the purest spirit chi, and its cultivation speed was fast. If one did not encounter any mishaps, one would most likely become a golden core. Given that he was a pseudo-spirit root, Su Zimo knew that Song Chi must have been through a lot of suffering to be able to reach level 7 Chi condensation in his 40s. "Let's go. Come with me to Pingyang town. I will give you 1,000 spirit stones in advance," Su Zimo said. "Ah!" Song Chi exclaimed. He could not conceal his joy. Song Chi did not expect that Su Zimo would agree to his request. After all, he was not a level 8 Chi refinement warrior, and he requested his employer to pay him spirit stones in advance. He felt sorry about it. He did not expect that Su Zimo would give him 1,000 spirit stones right away. "Young Master Su, thank you very much. I will do everything possible to protect the Su family." Song Chi thanked him profusely. Chapter 28, You would not be able to leave today. Chapter 28, You would not be able to leave today. Upon exiting Sky Treasure Pavilion, Song Chi took out a flying sword from his storage bag. He touched it lightly with his fingertips, infusing it with spirit chi, and the flying sword floated in front of the two of them. Song Chi could tell that Su Zimo had no spirit chi. Since he had a bow and saber with him, he must know martial arts. It should not be a problem to get onto the flying sword. Song Chi said, "Young Master Su, get on the flying sword. Don't be afraid. I will protect you while on the sword. I won't let you fall down from the sword. We will reach Pingyang town in no time." Su Zimo's eyes swept over Song Chi's flying sword, shaking his head. Let's walk, we will see how it goes when we exit the city. There was no spirit pattern on Song Chi's flying sword. It was a pseudo-spirit weapon. Su Zimo himself, with the sanguine crystal bow and cold moon saber, would weigh an entire ton. Given Song Chi's level 7 Chi condensation realm, he would not be able to carry all of them. Su Zimo did not point out the truth. They walked out of the city with long strides. There were not as many pedestrians outside the city. Su Zimo was about to execute Plo Heaven Stride to get to Pingyang Town when he noticed something. Someone is following us. Su Zimo did not turn back to check, but he could sense it. Su Zimo did not say anything but maintained his usual speed, walking toward Pingyang Town. Song Chi frowned, not saying anything. In no time, there was the sound of clothes flapping in the wind. The person was moving at a very fast speed. Cultivator? Song Chi was alarmed. He placed his hands on the storage bag as he turned to check. Not far away was a cultivator dressed in a black Taoist robe. He was speeding forward on his flying sword. There was a murderous look in his eyes. Obviously he had evil intentions. Level 8 Chi condensation. Song Chi let out a low shout, before he pulled Su Zimo to a side. He prayed fervently that the person was only passing by. In the blink of an eye, the black-robed Chi refinement warrior stopped in front of them. He leaped down from his flying sword, smiling coldly at Song Chi. Comrade, you had better step aside. Don't be a busybody. I have an enmity with this man. Song Chi glanced at Su Zimo, noticing that he had no expression on his face. Perhaps he was in a state of shock or that he did not know that there was danger. Song Chi cupped his fists. Comrade, you must be joking. My friend is a mere mortal. Why would you have any enmity with him? Buzz. The black-robed Chi refinement warrior touched his flying sword lightly. A beam of light shone from the flying sword. The sword's aura intensified. Inferior-grade spirit weapon. Song Chi had sweaty palms. The other party's cultivation realm was one level higher than him and he had an inferior-grade spirit weapon. If they engaged in fights, he had no chance of winning. Since you are dense, don't blame me for being ruthless. The black-robed Chi refinement warrior said coldly. Young Master Su, you should run for your life. Song Chi hurried to whisper to Su Zimo before he slapped his storage bag and a flying sword landed on his hand. Chi. Song Chi controlled the flying sword, making the first move so that he could take the other party by surprise. The flying sword turned into beams of lights, speeding toward the black-robed Chi refinement warrior. They reached him in no time. It was merely a pseudo-spirit weapon. How dare you act arrogant in front of me? The black-robed Chi refinement warrior sneered before he took his time to tap his sword, sending it flying forward, colliding with Song Chi's flying sword. Sparks were flying everywhere as the swords clashed into each other. Song Chi's flying sword was not as powerful. It almost flew off from the collision. The Chi refinement warrior's body was relatively weak. This posed a danger to them when in fights. If one was not careful, one might be injured by the other party's spirit weapon, and one would have no chance of surviving. Song Chi seemed to be on the losing end after sparring for a few rounds. He had no way to attack but could only defend himself. Fortunately, Song Chi was composed. He used all his energy to spar with the other party. His flying sword circled him, forming an impenetrable defense. Su Zimo nodded as he watched the scene from the side. Song Chi could have left under such circumstances. After all, he had gotten the 1,000 inferior-grade spirit stones. There was no need to put his life at risk for a mere mortal. Even though Song Chi knew that he could not defeat the other party, he did not leave by himself. It proved that he was a man of his words. Su Zimo could be reassured that Song Chi could be left in charge of protecting the Su family. Song Chi and the black-robed Chi refinement warrior was still in an intense battle. They were one level apart in terms of cultivation realm and their spirit weapons were of different grades as well. Song Chi's defenses gradually weakened in no time. The flying sword was not as steady as before. He had used up too much of his spirit chi and he was weakened. Right then, Su Zimo asked, Why do you want to kill me? The black-robed chi refinement warrior felt that he had the situation under control. He cast a sideways glance at Suzimo, before saying in a pitiful tone, I will tell you the reason so that you will know what caused your death. You are just a mortal, yet you had the sky treasure badge. This is why you must die. Song Chi turned to check in the midst of the battle, realizing that Suzimo was still standing on the same spot. He could not help but be anxious, shouting out to Suzimo, Why didn't you leave? Swash. Song Chi was distracted and the other party made use of the chance to cut through his defense with his flying sword. The flying sword was right before him. It was chilling. Song Chi had no time to steer the direction of his flying sword. He panicked and could not be bothered with maintaining his dignity. He had no choice but to roll on the ground, barely escaping from death. He was muddy all over, looking like a terrible sight. Suzimo smiled but did not say anything. Song Chi was helpless, saying through clenched teeth, I am not his opponent. Young Master Su, you should leave as soon as possible, or it will be too late. No one will be able to leave today. The black-robed chi refinement warrior hollered, and the flying sword sped up, hitting Song Chi's defense. Sound of metal clashing against one another could be heard. Right then, the two of them who were in a fierce fight heard a long sigh. Yes, you would not be able to leave today. Both Song Chi and the black-robed chi refinement warrior were shocked. Before they could figure out what Suzimo meant by that, they saw a terrifying sight from the corner of their eyes. Suzimo was standing 40 feet apart from them. But Suzimo reached them within 2 to 3 strides. There was a murderous glint in his eyes. He was like a human-devouring beast that had the single intent of killing the person in front of him. Song Chi, who was by the side, felt a sense of fear, let alone the black-robed chi refinement warrior who had been targeted by Suzimo. It's not good. The black-robed chi refinement warrior's heart jumped a beat. He retreated while he maneuvered the flying sword, thinking of changing its direction to kill Suzimo. However, the black-robed chi refinement warrior was too slow, and in Suzimo's eyes, he had too many weaknesses. Suzimo had a cold glint in his eyes. He had a backhand grip on Cold Moon Saber, swinging it in front of him. There was a flash of light from the saber. It was blinding. Poof! A large head was hurled off and it was cut neatly at the neck area. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Song Chi opened his mouth slightly. He was confused. He stared at the scene, dumbstruck, unable to recover himself. Dead. A level 8 chi refinement warrior was dead from one single slash of the saber. By luck. Down on his luck. Careless. Good saber. Suzimo looked at the Cold Moon Saber. It did not have the slightest drop of blood on it. He praised the saber and put it back into its scabbard with a backhand motion. Song Chi could not help but swallow his saliva. What kind of man would be so calm after killing a level 8 chi refinement warrior? In Song Chi's eyes, Suzimo had turned out to be a mysterious man. He was a different person from the frail scholar that he knew previously. Song Chi could not help but think of the scene just now. The more he thought about it, the more terrifying it was. He broke out in cold sweats thinking of it. He realized to his horror that if Suzimo used the saber on him, he would have no way to dodge it. Suzimo took the storage bag that was tied at the waist of the black-robed chi refinement warrior. He did not take another look before he threw it to Song Chi. Take it. I cannot take it. For some unknown reason, Song Chi seemed to be nervous around Suzimo. Suzimo smiled. Keep it and cultivate to level 8 chi condensation as soon as possible. When Suzimo smiled, he seemed to look like the frail scholar again. Song Chi relaxed slightly, no longer feeling as stressed, accepting the storage bag from him. Suzimo continued, you can concentrate on maneuvering the flying sword to reach Pingyang town as soon as possible. Song Chi agreed and was about to ask where was Suzimo going when he realized that he was no longer in the same position. He strode forward, covering 20 feet at one time. His speed was amazing. It was not until now that Song Chi realized that his employer was no simple man. Song Chi hurried to maneuver the sword to keep up with Suzimo. Chapter 29 I would take revenge for the Su family. Chapter 29 I would take revenge for the Su family. Su Zimo and the other man arrived at Pingyang town one after another. Su Zimo did not want to attract attention, therefore he told Song Chi to put away his flying sword and to walk with him to Su family's residence. The door to the mansion was tightly shut. Su Zimo had good hearing. From the intermittent sobbing sounds coming from the mansion, he could tell that it was Su Xiaoning. Su Zimo frowned, striding forward, exerting strength in his arms and pushed the door open. The crossbar behind the door broke into pieces. Who's there? A dozen black-armored cavalrymen dashed to the front door right away. They were seeing red, looking ready to kill. They were stunned at the sight of Su Zimo. Second young master? Su Zimo nodded, bringing Song Chi toward the direction where the crying sounds came from. Song Chi swept his gaze over the guards, slightly fearful of them. He could sense the murderous aura of the guards. They had obviously been through a lot on the battlefields to have such a fearsome aura. They were no ordinary pugilistic experts. Many people from the Su family were gathered outside Su Hong's room. Some of them were standing while some were sitting. Everyone looked solemn and crestfallen. Sorrow and misery hung in the air. Second young master is back, Uncle Zheng stood up and said. Su Zimo squinted his eyes as he asked, "How is brother now?" There was a look of worry on Uncle Zheng's face. He shook his head. "Wait for a while. Young master is still unconscious." Su Zimo swept his gaze over everyone in the Su family, saying in a low voice, "Do you still intend to keep it from me now that things had come to this stage?" Everyone in the Su family looked at each other, giving out a long sigh. "My father used to be Su Mu, Lord Wuding of the country of Yang. Is that right?" Su Zimo said softly. Everyone in the Su family looked alarmed. Uncle Zheng was shocked. "Second young master, you. Luo Tianwu came to look for me." Upon hearing his words, Uncle Zheng suddenly saw the light. He sighed before saying, "Luo Tianwu is no good man. He has rapacious designs. He dreams of being the king in troubled times." He sought young master, wanting to collaborate with him, but was refused. The Su family and King of Yang may be enemies, but young master does not want to implicate the people in the country of Yang. Your father had been on the battlefield all his life. His troops, the black-armored cavalry, were famed for guarding the frontier, resisting the external enemies. The country of Yang did not lose a single piece of land in the battles. The general made a vow that he would protect the people of the country of Yang all his life, so that they would have a place to live, and be spared from the pains of wars. Young master would continue his father's mission, therefore he refused to join hands with Luo Tianwu. Speaking of this, Uncle Zheng had no wish to keep things from Su Zimo anymore. He continued to say, over the years, young master would always be on the road. He was in fact gathering the former black-armored cavalry under the pretense of selling horses. He was training them while waiting for the opportunity to take revenge. How many people are there now? 5,000. Where can so many people hide? How can they hide from the spies of the countries of Yang and Qi? Su Zimo frowned. Uncle Zheng replied. They have been hiding at a ghostly village near the country of Yang. A few decades ago, the entire village was devoured and wiped out by packs of wolves, even fowls and dogs were not spared. There was not a soul to be seen. No one dared to live at the village. In the end, it turned out to be the best cover for them. Su Zimo thought before asking. Uncle Zheng used to hint that the enemies of the Su family are Qi refinement warriors. What do you mean by that? A few decades ago, there were many Qi refinement warriors in the capital city of the country of Yang. They guarded the King of Yang and therefore we had to keep postponing the plan of assassinating King of Yang. Young master waited patiently for a chance when the spies in the palace sent news a month ago that King of Yang was going hunting at the southern suburb. The black-armored cavalry would only be most powerful in wide terrain. The Qi refinement warriors would die if they make the slightest mistake when sparring with them. Su Zimo nodded. Qi refinement warriors had weak bodies. They were no different from normal mortals. If armies went into battles, and there was a storm of arrows, a few Qi refinement warriors would not be able to change the outcome. They might even die. Uncle Zheng shook his head and let out a long sigh. Unfortunately, the assassination this time failed. There were not a few but dozens of Qi refinement warriors beside the King of Yang. There was even a cultivation clan as the King of Yang's support. Su Zimo was shocked to hear this. In the cultivation world, the clan leader had to at least reach the foundation establishment realm before he could establish a clan. Uncle Zheng continued. Young Master was worried that they would attract attention, therefore, he only brought over thousands of black-armored cavalry with him and they went into the city in small groups. But they were besieged by dozens of Qi refinement warriors at the southern suburbs. They suffered heavy losses and young Master was heavily wounded, while only a few dozen black-armored cavalry survived out of the thousands of them. Songqi came forward and whispered. Second young Master Su, I have an essence nourishing pill. It is very common in the cultivation world. It can be used to stabilize the foundation and nourishing the essence. It should be useful to young Master. Thanks. Su Zimo nodded. Uncle Zheng said in disappointment, it's easy to heal the body, but it's difficult to heal the heart. The failure this time was too big a blow to young Master. Su Zimo frowned. Brother has strong willpower and determination. Why would he be defeated after one failure? Uncle Zheng smiled forlornly and sighed. Young Master knew that if there is a cultivation clan to support King of Yang, there will be no way for the Su family to take revenge. There is no grief so great as despair. I guess, there is no way to change things. Young Master is awake. Right then Liu Yu walked out of the room with a grave expression on his face. There was a strong pungent smell of medicine upon reaching the door. Su Zimo turned and looked toward the bed. His brother, Su Hong, lay silently on the bed. His injuries were serious and his breathing was getting weaker. Brother. Su Xiaoning, who stayed vigil beside the bed, cried out loud, running into Su Zimo's embrace, bursting into tears. Older brother is seriously injured. Second brother, can you think of a solution? Su Zimo patted Su Xiaoning gently on the back, comforting her with soft whispers. He helped her to the side before he went to check on Su Hong. Su Hong's hair had turned white. He had just reached 30 years old but he seemed aged. His face was gaunt and yellow and his lips were cracked. He stared blankly at the roof, as if he had lost his soul. His hair turned white overnight. Indeed, there was no grief so great as despair. Su Zimo's heart ached at the sight of his older brother. There were tears in his eyes. The Su family had been ensnared in a blood feud for years and his brother had to seek justice for the family by himself. For the past 16 years, this man protected his younger brother and sister from harm, for fear that they would suffer any slightest grievances or be hurt. He remained tight-lipped, worried that they would be embroiled in it. This man bore the hatred and feud by himself for 16 years. He could not imagine the kind of life that he led over the years. Had he ever been able to have a good night's sleep in the past 16 years? How painful and torturous it must be for this man to be living in hatred all the time for 16 years. Brother. Su Zimo's lips quivered as he called for his brother. There was never a moment where this word sounded so depressing as when Su Zimo spoke of it. Su Hong turned his head slowly, resting his blank gaze on Su Zimo's face for a long while before there was finally some sparkle in his eyes. He moved his stiff lips, forcing a smile on his lips, as he spoke softly, Zimo, you are back. Su Zimo knelt down on the floor, holding Su Hong's cold hands in his palms. He squeezed his lips tightly together, fighting back the tears in his eyes. Zimo, I won't be able to make it. Su Hong sighed softly. Su Zimo lost control at his words. Tears trailed down his cheeks, wetting his sleeves. This was the first time that Su Zimo cried in the past 18 years. Su Hong tried to lift his arm to wipe the tears on Su Zimo's face. But his arm was too weak and it fell back onto the bed in midway. Don't shed tears, don't shed tears. The men in the Su family only shed blood but not tears. Su Zimo lifted his sleeves to wipe his tears, nodding. Zimo, after I die, leave with Xiaoning and the Su family. Go to a place as far away as possible, Su Hong said. Su Zimo lowered his head, keeping silent. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his skin, blood oozing out of it. Su Zimo raised his head after a long while, looking calm. Brother, have a good rest. Don't think too much. There was something else that Su Zimo kept to himself. He would take revenge for the Su family. Chapter 30 An Eye for an Eye. Chapter 30 An Eye for an Eye. Su Zimo left the room. Uncle Zheng noticed that Su Zimo looked odd. He hurried to chase after him, saying in a low voice, "Second young master, don't be foolish to attempt another assassination on the King of Yang. The Su family could leave for a faraway place. The world is huge, we will have a place to go. Uncle Zheng, you have been worrying too much. I am not thinking of assassinating the King of Yang." Su Zimo shook his head, he did not seem like he was lying. Uncle Zheng nodded, not totally believing him. "I intend to move to the ghostly village to stay low for the time being. There are after all still 5,000 black-armored cavalry over there. It will be safer. Second young master, you should come with us. I have some matters to attend to. I will go to the ghostly village to look for you later." Su Zimo changed the topic, pointing to Song Qi at the side. "This is Mr. Song Qi. He is here to protect the Su family. If there's anything, you can discuss with him." Uncle Zheng did not think too much into it. He thought that Song Qi was a friend from the pugilistic society that Su Zimo knew. Su Zimo turned to leave. He had reached the door of the mansion when Song Qi caught up with him. "Young Master Su, are you thinking of going to the city where the King of Yang lives?" Song Qi could vaguely sense the murderous intent of Su Zimo, therefore he asked of his intention. Su Zimo kept on walking and he remained silent. Song Qi caught up with him again, saying in a deep voice, "Young Master Su, I know that you have the ability to kill Qi refinement warriors and you are very powerful in close proximity fights. However, that is only for one-to-one fight. You will not be able to reach the Qi refinement warriors when you are surrounded by the huge army. You won't have any chance. Even if you manage to kill King of Yang, will you be able to escape from the closely guarded city where the King of Yang lives in? There are the city army, the elite imperial army, the siege crossbows and various killing devices, as well as the attack by the Qi refinement warriors. There is no way for perfected Qi refinement warriors to assassinate the king of a country, let alone you. There is no chance of survival." "All right." Su Zimo turned abruptly, his face gloomy. Song Qi was startled. Su Zimo was expressionless. "Your mission is to protect the Su family. Don't worry about me, but..." Song Qi was about to persuade him further but Su Zimo waved his hands to stop him. "I will leave my brother in your hands. I hope that you will be able to nurse him back to health. As for his concern deep down inside of him, leave it to me. I will resolve it for him." With that, Su Zimo executed Plo Heaven Stride and disappeared out of sight in the blink of an eye. There was only a single way to resolve Su Hong's concern, and it was King of Yang's head. Su Zimo hurried along the streets in Pingyang town. There was nothing but coldness in his eyes. He could feel a burning rage inside of him. It was flaming. He could only douse the flames with the fresh blood of his enemy. Su Zimo reached his mansion in no time. He pushed the door open and walked straight to the cultivation field. Dai Yu was still lazing around on the greenstone in the cultivation field. She had an indifferent expression on her face as she cast a glance at Su Zimo. It had been a year since he last saw Dai Yu. Nothing seemed to have changed about her. She still looked very beautiful. It was as if she had not aged at all in the past 1 year. Su Zimo had thought of all kinds of scenes where he met up with Dai Yu after 1 year. But he had not expected that it would be like this. "I am leaving." Su Zimo lowered his head, speaking softly. He dared not look at Dai Yu. "Oh." Dai Yu raised her eyebrows slightly. "Now that I leave this time, I might not be able to come back." "Courting death?" "Sort of." Since Su Zimo wanted to enter the capital and kill the king of the country, he had to face not a man, but an entire country, as well as the multiple Qi refinement warriors and a cultivation clan. It was the cultivation clan that had foundation establishment cultivators with them. Su Zimo did not dream of coming back alive from his trip to the country of Yang. This might be the last farewell for the two of them. Dai Yu looked at Su Zimo, there was a tenderness in her eyes. "Even though you know you are courting death, You are going to go anyway. Su Zimo remained silent. Dai Yu continued. Actually, you have other better options. You can choose to take it lying down and continue to cultivate until you are strong enough. Scenes seemed to flash in Su Zimo's mind. It was as if it was 16 years ago. He saw how his parents died a terrible death under the saber. He saw how the Su family was massacred, and the river turned into blood, the corpses piled into a mountain. He saw how his older brother protected he and Xiaoning, and escaped from the city. He suffered a slash at his face and it went unnoticed even though it was covered with blood. In the end, Su Zimo's gaze rested on his brother's white hair, his gaunt and yellow face, and his blank eyes. Why do I cultivate? Su Zimo blurted out all of a sudden, as if asking Dai Yu, but he seemed to be muttering to himself as well. I cultivate not to take things lying down. If I want to do so, I would have knelt down at perfected Kang Lang's bullying behavior 1 year ago. If I wanted to do so, I would have pleaded for mercy when Zhu Dingyun came to take my life. The next moment, Su Zimo suddenly looked up. He could feel the blood surging in his body, his eyes bloody red. He shouted. Since I feel unjust, I will make sure to seek justice. So what if he is the king of a country? So what if he has a cultivation clan to support him? I will kill to my heart's content. It is better to do things on a grand and spectacular scale this moment than to take things lying down for the entire life. I cultivate so as to go all out to exact revenge. I cultivate as I believe in an eye for an eye. Good. Dai Yu nodded. In the 1.5 years of cultivation, Dai Yu had never praised him. This was the first time that he heard this word coming from Dai Yu. Remember what you said today. It concerns your future and achievements. Dai Yu made another remark which Su Zimo could not understand. There was a demonic glitter in Dai Yu's eyes. Thereafter, there were several sutras in Su Zimo's mind. This is the Bone Strengthening Sutra. It is taken from the Divine Steed Demon King. The Divine Steed was headstrong. It had the fastest gallop, it was forceful and resilient, there was a strong momentum and explosive power in its gallop. I will impart another 3 styles to you. Divine Steed Dismemberment, Divine Steed Trampling and Divine Steed Fleeting. You can try to figure it out along the way. If you are able to comprehend it, you might be able to be on par with level 10 perfected Qi refinement warriors. Dai Yu leaped down from the green stone and began to show him the moves. Su Zimo did not blink at all, he was focused on learning the 3 styles. He knew that this could be his last hope at killing the King of Yang and returning alive. Dai Yu was done with the demonstration of the 3 styles in no time. She looked toward Su Zimo as she said, "Go along." One word of reminder. Demon cultivators are best at skipping the levels and killing the opponents. Given your capabilities now, although you are not as good as Foundation Establishment cultivators, if you are able to be in their close proximity, you will still be able to kill them instantly. Su Zimo nodded. Foundation Establishment cultivators would release an explosive energy when they maneuvered flying swords. It was far better and much more flexible than Qi refinement warriors. They might have other attack and defensive moves that were sufficient to kill Su Zimo. But this did not mean that Foundation Establishment cultivators had no weaknesses. Although they had stronger bodies than Qi refinement warriors, their physical strength was still no match for Su Zimo. If Su Zimo had the opportunity to get close to them, he would still be able to kill them on the spot. It sounded simple, but it was in fact as difficult as reaching the sky. Su Zimo looked at Dai Yu, no longer hiding his reluctance to part with her. He smiled lightly and said, "Miss Dai, goodbye." Dai Yu turned with her back facing him as she waved to him. Su Zimo took a deep breath and walked out of the cultivation field, looking toward the capital city of the country of Yang that was far in the distance. He clenched his fists as he said softly, "King of Yang, wash your neck clean. I am coming." Chapter 31. At close combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. Chapter 31. At close combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. Su Zimo headed north from Pingyang town, crossing Kang Lang mountain range and entered the territory of the country of Yang. Zimo did not ride a horse along the way. Given his full speed right now, no horse was powerful enough to be able to catch up to him. The weather had turned cold, and early winter had arrived. But Zimo was burning hot, white clouds of vapor rising from the top of his head. While Zimo hurried along the way, he was applying the bones strengthening sutra. His legs alternated in an amazing speed. Not even a shadow of his could be seen. Divine steed fleeting. This style in the bones strengthening section was known for its speed. Plow heaven stride was used to train the strength in the legs, and every stride came with tremendous force. On the other hand, divine steed fleeting was all about speed. Through mastering the foundation of body tempering section and tendons transformation section, and by working one's muscles and shaking one's tendons, the bones were strengthened through constant beating and hitting. If one achieved initial success in the bone strengthening section, once the person exerted strength, there would be cracking crisp sounds of the bones. When the person achieved phenomenal success, all the tendons and bones would give out loud sounds. After cultivating the bone strengthening section, one's physical strength would be significantly increased. By using the divine steed style, one could travel 500 kilometers a day and 400 kilometers a night. No other demon could match up to this kind of superb stamina. To travel from Pingyang town to the country of Yang, a level 10 perfected Qi refinement warrior would need about 10 days while traveling day and night without rest. After mastering divine steed fleeting, Zimo was able to reach the country of Yang on the 8th day. Along the way, Zimo walked at full speed, as swift as the wind, constantly using the breathing and expiration method of bone strengthening section, never stopping for 1 second. This was all thanks to the scarlet flame fruit that sealed the huge source of essence in his body. This was why Zimo was able to keep cultivating. Zimo carried the sanguine crystal bow on his back and the cold moon saber around his waist, and was travel-worn when he arrived at the capital city of the country of Yang. He had yet to enter the city, but he could tell that the city was tightly guarded. There were dozens of armored guards standing on the 2 sides of the city gate, checking the pedestrians one by one. Zimo carried a casual expression and walked up to the city gate. One of the guards stopped Zimo, sizing him up. There was mockery in his eyes, as he smiled softly. "You are just a poor scholar, why did you carry a bow and saber with you? Bluffing people?" Zimo was clad in his usual green robe. He had a fair complexion and delicate features. He did not seem like someone who practiced martial arts. That was why the guards found it odd that a scholar carried a bow and saber with him. Zimo remained composed, carrying a smile, not making any comments. "Hey, that poor guy, take the saber at your waist and let me take a look. Has it been edged?" "Haha." Another city guard who was further away joined in the fun as well. There was a change in Zimo's countenance as he slowly reached his hands toward Cold Moon Saber. Zimo had no wish to start a fight at the city gate. Once he started the killing spree here, all the city guards would come at him. Qi refinement warriors might even be here as well. Even if Zimo managed to survive and go all the way to the palace, the king of Yang would have gone into hiding. Just when Zimo's hand rested on the hilt of Cold Moon Saber, the commander of the guards who stood by the side saw the scene and laughed while he lamented his troops. "Damn, you guys only know how to bully a scholar. Hey, scholar, you can ignore them and enter the city." Zimo relaxed slightly and nodded toward the man, before he entered the city. Zimo located Sky Treasure Pavilion and went to the 2nd level. He intended to deposit Sanguine Crystal Bow and Cold Moon Saber at this place for the time being. These 2 weapons were too eye-catching. It was impossible for him to bring them into the palace. With the Sky Treasure Badge, Zimo was able to deposit items for free. The manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion at the country of Yang gave a soft sigh when Zimo took out his Sky Treasure Badge. He smiled as he asked, "Young master, can I take a look at your badge?" Zimo handed his Sky Treasure Gold badge over. There was an odd look on the manager's face when he looked at the badge. "Why, is anything wrong?" Zimo frowned. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion immediately shook his head, smiling as brightly as before, handing the Sky Treasure Gold badge back. "There's no problem. When do you intend to retrieve the items?" If everything goes as planned, it will be tomorrow. With that, Su Zimo turned to leave Sky Treasure Pavilion. After Su Zimo left, the smile on the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion vanished and he looked grim. Manager, is the Sky Treasure gold badge fake? The person is no Chi refinement warrior, yet he has a Sky Treasure gold badge. He is indeed suspicious, one of the workers at Sky Treasure Pavilion asked. It's not fake. It is 100% real. The manager shook his head, frowning, deep in his thoughts. The morning of the next day, the ministers gathered outside the palace, ready to go to the royal court to see the King of Yang. Su Zimo was among one of them. After achieving initial success at Tendon's transformation, Su Zimo was able to shrink and move the muscles on his face, making changes to his facial appearance. But he was unable to change his body shape. If he reached phenomenal success at Tendon's transformation, he would be able to have a complete transformation, changing his body shape. If he could achieve phenomenal success at bone strengthening, he would even be able to shrink and expand his bones, changing his height to become a totally different person. Last night, Su Zimo knocked a civil official named Shangguan Yu unconscious, and took his place to attend the morning session today. Brother Shangguan, I have not seen you for a few days and you seem to have grown taller. One man next to him came over to chat with him. Su Zimo remained silent, not reacting to his words. One was bound to have a slip of the tongue if he talked too much. Moreover, Su Zimo might have changed his facial appearance, but he was unable to have the same voice as Shangguan Yu. Seeing that Su Zimo did not reply to him, the person turned around in embarrassment after inviting a snub. He no longer chatted with Su Zimo. Clang, clang, clang. The bell tower rang. All the civil and martial officials tidied their appearance and walked in 2 rows toward the palace. An old man in his 50s to 60s, with a crown on his head and in a dragon robe sat in the center of the palace, perched high up. His gaze was fiery, looking majestic and awe-inspiring from sitting on the throne for many years. This was the King of Yang. There were 4 Chi refinement warriors in Taoist robes on the 2 sides of the King of Yang. They looked relaxed, as if they were taking a short rest. The civil and martial officials entered the palace, kneeled before the king and shouted in a loud voice, "All hail the king." This sound echoed in the palace, it was loud and forceful. He, Zhao Qian. While the officials were greeting the king, someone sneered among the crowd. It was particularly jarring. Zhao Qian was the name of the King of Yang. Who dared to call the king by their name in front of the king himself? All the officials were alarmed, looking toward the sound. A man was seen walking out from the crowd. He took off his official's robe, revealing a green robe inside. Shangguan Yu, you must be crazy. How dare you offend the king? One of the martial officials snarled, but he noticed that the facial appearance of the green-robed man was undergoing odd changes. He turned into another person in the blink of an eye. All the officials thought that they were seeing things. They rubbed their eyes and widened their eyes to take a closer look. He was not Shangguan Yu. The 4 Chi refinement warriors who sat next to the King of Yang frowned, sweeping their gaze over Su Zimo. They sneered when they discovered that the man had no spirit chi. To them, changing facial appearances was merely a small trick. The King of Yang remained composed all along. His gaze was swift and fierce. He stared at Su Zimo, speaking in a cold voice. "Who are you? Don't you recognize me?" Su Zimo smiled and asked, "Do you still remember Su Mu?" Pest. There was a commotion within the officials. This name was a taboo in the country of Yang. No one dared to speak of it in front of the King of Yang. The King of Yang squinted his eyes and took a closer look at Su Zimo. The King of Yang raised his head and laughed after a long while. "Ha ha ha ha, are you his son?" "Yes." Su Zimo smiled and nodded. "Su Hong is my older brother." "Oh." The King of Yang raised his eyebrows and ridiculed him. "What is your intention by coming to my palace?" Su Zimo said softly, "I am here to kill you." He. Ha ha. All the officials broke out into laughter. To them, Su Zimo, the frail scholar, was like an idiot who spoke conceited nonsense. Poof. The King of Yang could not help but laugh as he nodded. "This is interesting, very interesting." Su Zimo once told Uncle Zheng that he never thought of assassinating the king of Yang. He was telling the truth. Regardless of whether it was covert killing or assassination, to Su Zimo, it was not enough to appease his rage and the injustice done to his family. That would be letting the king of Yang off too easily. Su Zimo had to kill the king of Yang, and he would do it openly, in front of all the officials. Su Zimo wanted the king of Yang and the entire world to know that it was Su Mu's descendants who killed the king of Yang. It was only through this way could he feel the slightest pleasure and appease his anger and hatred. The king of Yang shook his head, feeling slightly emotional. I didn't expect that the two sons of Su Mu would be vastly different. Su Hong endured it for 16 years and planned the assassination for years. He only dared to lay an ambush and to assassinate me. How dare you have the impudence to come to my palace and threaten to kill me? How dare you, and on what basis? The king of Yang sneered. To me, Su Hong is considered as somewhat capable. And you? Hehe, you are merely an ignorant man who is brave, but lacks wisdom and tact. Ignorant man? Su Zimo smiled, raising his head as he asked, Zhao Qian, have you heard of this saying? Once the ignorant man was enraged, he would cause bloodshed within 5 steps. At close combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. With that, there was a bright glitter in Su Zimo's eyes. He exuded a piercing cold and murderous aura. The temperature of the main hall seemed to drop suddenly. Chapter 32, Slay the King. Chapter 32, Slay the King. Not good. The Qi refinement warriors sitting by both sides of the king of Yang stood up suddenly. Their countenances changed greatly. It was extremely dangerous. Suddenly, this seemingly weak and frail scholar had changed into a different person. The aura that he emanated made the 4 Qi refinement warriors terror-stricken. Such was already the case for the Qi refinement warriors, much less the rest of the people in the main hall. Some of the civil officials were so frightened that they dropped to the ground, paralyzed and numb. Bang! Both Su Zimo's feet landed on the floor and gave out a deafening thud. The floor laid with gold bricks split on impact, causing a long and huge crack to appear on it. Below the cracks was like a dark and spooky hell that emitted a cold and sinister aura. The entire palace was shaking violently. Dust fell. The sky and ground were seemingly on the brink of collapse, and the atmosphere was absolutely terrifying. If one did not see it with his own eyes, no one dared to believe that the scene before them was caused by one individual. Su Zimo had already disappeared from the earlier spot. His figure dashed ahead like a divine and savage steed. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the king of Yang. Fast. It was too fast. The earlier spot that Su Zimo stood was at least 10 feet away from the king of Yang. However, everyone only felt their eyes blur for a moment before Su Zimo appeared just 1 elbow away from the king of Yang. At this moment, the 4 Qi refinement warriors beside the king of Yang had just searched out their spirit weapons from their storage bags. The reaction time of the two sides were on completely different levels. It was not until this moment that everyone in the main hall finally understood Su Zimo's earlier words. Although he was 10 feet away from the king of Yang, to Su Zimo, that was only considered an elbow's length. At such a close range, one would not be able to beat an ordinary man even when he had the aid of the entire country. Why you? What are you doing? The king of Yang was so frightened that his liver and gall were almost splitting. Scared out of his wits, his eyes were filled with horror and he backed off instinctively. Su Zimo's expression was chilling and cold. He conveniently hurled off the crown on the king of Yang's head. The latter's hair fell all over his face, making him look unkempt and embarrassed. Su Zimo stepped forward, reached out his palm, grabbed the king of Yang's hair and lifted him up. Ah! The king of Yang screamed when he felt the severe pain coming from his scalp. Beads of sweat could be seen on his forehead and his limbs turned cold. Mortal, how dare you? Release the king of Yang quickly. Otherwise, you will face death for sure. 2 of the 4 Qi refinement warriors were controlling flying swords. Another one was directing a long saber. The remaining one was controlling a roulette with sharp edges. Out of the 4 spirit weapons, only the roulette had a spirit pattern and was an inferior grade spirit weapon. The other 3 weapons suspended in the air were pseudo-spirit weapons. They were aimed at the vital points on Suzimo's body and were waiting for an opportune time to strike. Suzimo did not seem bothered. He dragged the King of Yang's hair and took a few steps back. He used his backhand grip to pick up the long saber that was placed horizontally on the rack behind him. Clang! Sounds of sharp blades unsheathing resonated across the main hall. The lingering sounds were so creepy that it sent chills up one's spine. Suzimo placed the long saber on the King of Yang's neck horizontally. The King of Yang could feel the coldness from the sharp blade. Shortly after, he was having goosebumps all over. "My name is Suzimo. Remember me." Suzimo's voice rang in his ears. There was not the slightest change in Suzimo's emotions. Yet, the King of Yang felt very nervous. "Suzimo, do you know that the Imperial Army and Royal Guards total over 150,000 people? Coupled with the Immortal cultivation clan behind me, you won't be able to escape even if you can fly." The King of Yang was the ruler of a country after all. When his life was at stake, he tried his best to regain his composure, forcefully suppressed his fears and said while gritting his teeth, "Why don't I make a deal with you?" "Hee." Suzimo laughed. At the sound of this laughter, the King of Yang's heart gradually sank to the bottom of the valley. He could sense that Suzimo was hell-bent on killing him. Swoosh! At this very moment, the King of Yang could hear the sounds of weapons moving in the air at lightning speed. The Qi refinement warrior is taking action. The King of Yang rejoiced in his heart. As long as the Qi refinement warrior could kill Suzimo with one slash of the sword, he would still have a chance to live. The Qi refinement warrior who made the move was standing behind Suzimo. The distance between the two was too close. He was less than 10 feet away. The flying sword stabbed towards the blind spot of Suzimo's sight. It approached the back of Suzimo's brains like a flash of light at that instant. The eyes of the other 3 Qi refinement warriors lit up. It looked like the flying sword was going to stab the back of Suzimo's brains. As if eyes were grown on his back and without turning his head, Suzimo suddenly swung his arms behind his head and wrapped that flying sword gently, seemingly not using much strength. The expression of the attacking Qi refinement warrior changed. He discovered that he had actually lost control of the flying sword. The Qi refinement warrior had wound his own spirit Qi around the flying sword to control the weapon. He could direct the sword with his hands for the purpose of attacking or defending. However, how powerful was the bovine-tongued saber? Under the wrapping, the spirit Qi of the flying sword dissipated instantly. Suzimo flipped his hand and threw the sword away. Poof! The flying sword pierced through the chest of the Qi refinement warrior and drew out a streak of blood. Unhindered, it pierced into the wall of the main hall ruthlessly, the blade trembling non-stop. The entire process seemed slow when narrated, but it occurred very quickly. From the moment that the Qi refinement warrior took action to the point where the sword pierced through his body, it took less than the moment of a breath. This man's expression was dazed, his eyes filled with disbelief and losing focus as he landed on the floor with a loud thud. Pest! The remaining 3 Qi refinement warriors gasped and took a few steps back instinctively. They were trying to distance themselves from Suzimo. If the earlier sword from Suzimo was thrown towards any of them, none of them could have dodged it. The speed of that sword was completely beyond their response time. Hurry! Go and notify senior brother Liu for reinforcement. One of the 3 Qi refinement warriors looked terrified. He dashed towards the back of the main hall and disappeared in the blink of an eye. To the King of Yang, these few moments of breath seemed 100 years long. They had failed. Even the Qi refinement warriors failed when they took actions. All this while, the long saber on the neck of the King of Yang had never left him by an inch. Suzimo lowered his head slightly and whispered into the ears of King of Yang, "Zhao Qian, do you know that, the moment that I stepped into the palace, you were already a dead man? If I say that I will kill you, no one can save you even when you search high and low for a savior." There was pin-drop silence in the wide and spacious main hall. Seemingly, everyone had been stunned by an individual's aura and kept mum out of fear. Suzimo's voice was not loud. It was light and calm, as if he was chatting with the King of Yang. However, behind this voice, Everyone could feel the murderous intent that made one's heart shudder. The King of Yang was shivering with fear all over. His teeth clattered loudly non-stop. Zhao Qian, you don't need to be afraid. It is just one slash. There won't be any pain. Su Zimo's gaze was icy cold. He said word by word, I will send you on the road to apologize to my parent. Poof. The large head of the King of Yang had been cut off by Su Zimo in one slash. He was holding it in his hands. Even upon his death, the King of Yang's eyes were popped out wide and filled with horror. In fact, before the slash, the King of Yang had already died of fear. He had been frightened till death when he was alive. Ta, ta, ta. Successive footsteps could be heard coming from outside the palace. The imperial army of the Kingdom of Yang had already rushed here. Su Zimo tied the King of Yang's head on his waist and surveyed the surroundings. Shaking the long saber in his hands and exuding a murderous aura, he said coldly, the King of Yang is already dead. Anyone who stops me shall not be spared. Chapter 33, The Powerful Repression. Chapter 33, The Powerful Repression. Just as Su Zimo beheaded the King of Yang, the hundreds of civil and military officials in the main hall panicked and were at a loss over what to do. Some fainted on the spot with their eyes rolled back, while some fled outside without even turning back. Among the crowd who fled, there was an excited gleam in the eyes of one of the martial officials despite his terrified expression. When this person ran to a corner outside the palace, an ordinary-looking soldier nearby immediately joined him. The person said in a low voice, quickly leave the palace and send a pigeon post to City Lord Luo. Tell him that the King of Yang is already dead and the important event can be realized. Order received. That soldier quickened his steps and left the palace. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared into the crowd. In the main hall, Su Zimo held the long saber with his right hand. With the King of Yang's head hung on his waist, he wanted to dash outside but he suddenly heard someone hollering behind him, Who are you? How dare you come to the palace and behave so atrociously? Su Zimo looked back. Both Su Zimo and that person who spoke were frozen for a moment. The person who spoke had a gaunt and thin face and he wore a wide and long robe. His left sleeves looked empty. He was a one-armed man. This person was none other than the level 8 Qi refinement warrior from Joyful Clan who escaped a narrow death when Su Zimo paralyzed one of his arms in Kanglang Mountain Rain. It's you. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior recognized Su Zimo at one glance. The fissumeness in his eyes instantly turned into fear and panic. Although the condition of his wounds had already stabilized, he was often awakened by nightmares in recent nights. That wild man in Kanglang mountain range was even more terrifying and savage than spirit beasts. He was like a recurring nightmare that would not go away. Su Zimo laughed. With a sinister stare, he said in a spooky manner, So, you are the one. All of you, stop him. I'm going to send a message to the clan. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior could sense Su Zimo's murderous intent. He did not think of resisting at all. After shouting, he actually escaped to the direction where he came from atop his flying sword. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior was very clear of Su Zimo's weakness. If he wanted to escape from Su Zimo's clutches, he would have to use sword kinesis flight. The ceiling in the palace had a certain height and he was worried that he would not be able to leave Su Zimo's range of attack. As long as he escaped to the outside to the boundless sky and sea, he could then survive. Su Zimo slid his soles and dashed forward. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of one of the Qi refinement warriors. He supinated his hands and gave a punch. Bang! Just as this man drew out his spirit weapon, his head exploded on the impact of Su Zimo's punch and he died on the spot. After he was enlightened about divine steed fleeting, Su Zimo's speed increased further and he could close in with even more ease. Once Su Zimo closed in on the Qi refinement warrior, it meant that the latter's death was imminent. G. The only level 8 Qi refinement warrior in the main hall directed the inferior grade spirit weapon towards Su Zimo. There was a flash of radiance on the roulette spirit weapon. The spirit pattern shone, the power and speed of the spirit weapon increased greatly. Without even looking at it, Suzimo supinated his hands and slashed with his long saber. Snap! The long saber broke and the roulette's speed reduced greatly upon the huge and astonishing impact. Suzimo stretched out his palm and placed it on the roulette gently. Rap and vibrate. The roulette had already fallen into his hands. Right from the beginning, Suzimo had never paused. He bumped into the arms of another chi refinement warrior, exerted all his strength and leaned towards him. Bang! This man was flung off instantly. In mid-air, his body suddenly exploded and disintegrated. Broken arms and legs were flying around and blood and flesh splattered all over. In a few moments, Suzimo had broken away from the encirclement of the few chi refinement warrior and dashed towards the one-armed chi refinement warrior. The one-armed chi refinement warrior was escaping very quickly. While he was flying on the sword, he was furiously penning down something. It was uncertain what he was writing. The moment the one-armed chi refinement warrior escaped out of the palace, he threw the thing in his hands towards the sky. Suzimo watched carefully. There was a lifelike, white paper crane the size of a palm in mid-air. It was shining with spirit light. After fluttering its wings a few times, it flew towards a distance and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Suzimo vaguely guessed that this white paper crane was a talisman of the cultivation world. It was a means of communication. Although he was aware of this, Suzimo could not stop it. The sword kinesi's flight speed of the one-armed chi refinement warrior was not as quick as Suzimo. With the delay, Suzimo almost caught with him. This man was terrified. He rampantly circulated spirit chi into his flying sword. The flying sword rose and dashed higher up in the sky. You were lucky to have escaped the last time. Today, you will stay here. At the sight of the chi refinement warrior about to dash into the sky, Suzimo hollered and threw up the roulette that he had picked up in passing. Oh! Oh! The roulette transformed into a flash of light, broke through the empty sky, giving out intense and terrifying sounds as the winds roared. Although one was in the sky and the other on the ground, they were not too far from each other. The one-armed chi refinement warrior wanted to avoid it but was too late. In that split second, the one-armed chi refinement warrior gritted his teeth. Disregarding whether he would fall off, he controlled the flying sword on his feet, wanting to block the roulette that was shooting over. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere as the sword and roulette clashed into each other. The one-armed chi refinement warrior's expression suddenly changed. The spirit chi on his flying sword actually dissipated instantly. The flying sword lost control upon the impact of the collision and reversed towards him at an even faster speed. Poof! The entire flying sword pierced into the belly of the one-armed chi refinement warrior. That was a chi refinement warrior's lifeline and sea of chi. The broken sea of chi meant that over 10 years of his cultivation from painstaking efforts had gone to waste. The one-armed chi refinement warrior fell from the sky and landed heavily on the floor. Dust flew all over and successive sounds of bones breaking could be heard coming from inside his body. Looking ghastly pale and blood foaming from the mouth, the one-armed chi refinement warrior saw Suzimo striding towards him. Endless malice and resentment flashed across his eyes. With a ferocious expression, he laughed crazily and said, "You are finished. I have just notified the clan. Not long after, Foundation establishment cultivators will rush over to slay you. You will come down to keep me company very soon." Ha 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 ha. Oh! Suzimo raised his brows and said, "So there aren't any Foundation establishment cultivators in the capital then?" The one-armed chi refinement officer was stunned. "Thanks for the information. It looks like I, Suzimo, am not destined to die yet. Even the capital city of the country of Yang cannot stop me." Suzimo's expression was cold and aloof. He stepped forward and trampled on the skull of the one-armed chi refinement warrior, crushing it. He took this man's storage bag and put it away in his arms before dashing outside. If there were Foundation establishment cultivators in the capital, coupled with other chi refinement officers, city guards, and the Imperial Army, it would be very difficult for Suzimo to leave the capital. This was because there was a huge gap of one realm between the Foundation establishment cultivator and chi refinement warrior. This was a great leap in quality, and the strong powers erupted by Foundation establishment cultivators was enough to kill Suzimo. On the other hand, without the Foundation establishment cultivators, even level 10 perfected Chi refinement warriors would be of little threat to Suzimo. I have to make my way out as soon as possible, Suzimo told himself quietly. If he were to dawdle too long in the capital, he would eventually land himself in a hard battle when the Foundation establishment cultivators from Joyful Clan arrived. It would be hard for him to escape death then. The Imperial army of the King of Yang formed a massive array, holding spears as they dashed forward fearlessly. At one glance, they were impenetrable. Kill! 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 Hundreds and thousands of the Imperial army hollered angrily together. The sound was deafening. A massive and powerful aura engulfed the entire place, slamming towards Suzimo as if wanting to drown him. The Imperial army was absolutely loyal to the King of Yang. They were resolute and determined. Although Suzimo was so powerful that he could kill Chi refinement warriors, the Imperial army was fearless and did not back off. Every member of the Imperial army had a gaze that was as sharp as a sword. Carrying a chilling expression, they had strong murderous intent. The congregation of hundreds and thousands of the Imperial army erupted a powerful and unwavered determination that astonished the minds and heart. This was the power of a country. Enshrouded by this massive aura and the frightening willpower, even Chi refinement warriors who came would have long been scared out of their wits and turned cowardly prior to fighting. However, Suzimo's expression remained unchanged. Instead, the brilliance in his eyes intensified. Suzimo took a long and deep breath and circulated the Anaconda Eclipse Heart Sutra. His chest bulged and lifted, seemingly wanting to devour the sun and moon. Pausing for a moment, he suddenly opened his mouth. Ah! Suzimo gave a long yell. A humongous flow of energy surged out of Suzimo's mouth. His voice was booming and high-pitched, penetrating gold and cracking stones, and shrouding the shouts of the 100,000s of the Imperial army instantly. Many members of the Imperial army revealed a pained expression. The weapons in their hands dropped and they covered their ears with both hands. In Kanglang mountain range, Suzimo had personally witnessed a spirit demon roaring loudly and shattering the body of small and weak spirit beasts with that force. Although his yell was not that lethal, it was still astonishing and powerful. How could ordinary people withstand that? Boom! Suzimo took a step out, causing the ground to tremble, black bricks split open and sandstones flew all over. The King of Yang is already dead. Who dares to stop me? At this moment, it was as if Suzimo had been possessed by a powerful ancient demon. The murderous aura was stifling, seemingly wanting to destroy the entire world. It subdued the aura of the hundreds and thousands of the Imperial army troops almost instantly. Many of the soldiers in the Imperial army turned ghastly pale with dazed expressions. They actually fell to the ground with wobbly legs. The Imperial army was in chaos. The strong and powerful aura gathered earlier was swept away immediately, revealing faint signs of defeat. At this juncture, Suzimo laughed loudly. He was looking disdainfully at everyone out of the corner of his eyes. The aura was towering. The ordinary man in the eyes of the King of Yang was repressing the power of a country. Chapter 34: The Intense Battle in the Capital. Chapter 34: The Intense Battle in the Capital. The Imperial army suffered a major setback. Suzimo had not even made any moves to attack. He only dashed around madly in the swarm of soldiers with plow-heaven stride. In 10 minutes, he had already forced his way out. Bang! 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 The areas that Suzimo had passed through were in great chaos. There were hundreds of thousands of the Imperial army trying to hold him back. Yet, he was seemingly in a no-man's territory and no one could halt his steps. Suzimo circulated body petrification. The muscles in his entire body tightened until they were as hard as rocks and his defensive ability increased greatly. When the Imperial army pierced Suzimo with the golden spears in their hands, the spears would either slip off or break on the spot. They could not hurt Suzimo at all. Not long after, Suzimo had already dashed out of the palace. At this moment, Suzimo sensed great danger in his heart. When he was running, He suddenly made dodging moves and lowered his body like an anaconda slithering close to the ground. Swoosh! A cold beam of sword light streaked across the top of Suzimo's head. It was a chi refinement warrior. Suzimo rose. He dashed diagonally towards the direction where the sword came from like a wild bull, hurling off many of the Imperial army by the side. The chi refinement warrior who was hiding in the crowd saw his flying sword come to nothing. Just as he tried to redirect the flying sword, before he could even recover his senses, he discovered that all of the Imperial army in front blocking him from view had already fallen to the ground. The blood-drenched Suzimo had already closed in on him. It was too late for this person to dodge. Bang! Suzimo casually punched him and the latter was flung away. The eyes of this chi refinement warrior had lost focus. His chest collapsed, his bones shattered and pierced into his lungs. Before his body touched the ground, he had already stopped breathing. With the power erupted from Suzimo's body, even if he did not make any moves, the chi refinement warrior would not be able to withstand any one casual punch or kick from him as well. At this moment, the capital was in great chaos. More and more chi refinement warriors gathered as they rushed over from various places across the city. During this time, there were already about 10 of them who had taken hostile action against Suzimo. Initially, these chi refinement warriors hid among the Imperial army and guards while directing the flying sword to attack Suzimo. However, after Suzimo killed a few of them, the remaining chi refinement warriors were feeling scared. They realized that Suzimo could find them even if they hid in the crowd. The Imperial army and city guards could not stop Suzimo at all. One after another, many chi refinement warriors rose into the air, surrounding and attacking Suzimo. Although this would deplete their spirit chi faster, Suzimo could not pose a threat to them then. The worst situation had occurred. In such a circumstance whereby dozens of chi refinement warriors constantly attacked him, Suzimo could still circulate body petrification to endure the attacks from the lower-level chi refinement warriors. However, Suzimo had to dodge the attacks from the level 9 and perfected chi refinement warriors when they unsheathed their inferior-grade spirit weapons. The hardest part was that Suzimo had no way to retaliate. In addition, Suzimo's speed would definitely decrease if he were to rely solely on his spirit perception to dodge the attacks of the chi refinement warrior. Coupled with the constant harassment by the Imperial army and guards surrounding him, Suzimo could very possibly lose his life in the capital. Everyone, there is no need to panic. This lad can't leave the place. As long as we unanimously join forces and detain him in the capital, the Foundation establishment cultivators from my joyful clan will arrive very soon. In mid-air, a perfected chi refinement warrior said loudly. At this very moment, Suzimo suddenly turned back and smiled at that person. He had a strange look in his eyes. This person's heart froze. He flew on the flying sword and quickly retreated so that he could distance himself from Suzimo. Barely anyone had noticed that Suzimo came all the way to the palace from an inconspicuous corner and not the main gate of the capital. That was where the Sky Treasure Pavilion was located. Suzimo rushed out of the Imperial army's entrapment and headed towards a wall ahead of him. Swoosh! The moment that Suzimo hit the wall suddenly transformed into a glistening water curtain and Suzimo's figure disappeared from sight. Many members of the Imperial army were stunned on the spot. Some people did not believe it. They slammed their skulls on it but ended up falling to the ground with broken and bleeding heads. The chi refinement warrior in the mid-air furrowed his brows tightly. Of course, they were aware that the place was the Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, what shocked them was that Suzimo could enter and leave the Sky Treasure Pavilion as he wished, although he was not a chi refinement warrior. This proved that he had the Sky Treasure badge. Senior Brother Lee, what should we do? One of the chi refinement warriors asked in a low voice. The Sky Treasure Pavilion was the largest trading house in the Great Ju dynasty and had a superior status. Killing and fighting was banned in the premise. There was once a situation where Foundation establishment cultivators stirred up trouble in the Sky Treasure Pavilion and ended up being killed on the spot. There had been rumors in the Great Ju dynasty that the Sky Treasure Pavilion's backing was the monarch of the Great Ju dynasty. No matter how gutsy these chi refinement warriors were, They dared not enter the place to catch people. No need to worry. This person cannot always hide inside. He will have to come out sooner or later. When the clan elders rush here and communicate with Sky Treasure Pavilion, I don't believe that Sky Treasure Pavilion will jeopardize their relationship with Joyful Clan for the sake of one mortal. On the second floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. The manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion had been startled awake. Blinking his sleepy eyes, he asked the waiting staff beside him, "What happened outside? Why is it so chaotic? I heard that the King of Yang has been killed and the murderer is on the run. He's not caught yet." No. Listening to what the people outside said, he did not seem to be a chi refinement warrior. However, he knows corporal mortification martial arts. He is invulnerable and has very strong close combat ability. Many chi refinement warriors have already died in his hands. Could it be him? The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion muttered and frowned as a figure flashed across his mind. At this very moment, he could hear footsteps coming from the main hall. The speed of the visitor was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the footsteps had already ascended to the second floor. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion focused his sight. He only saw a young man drenched in blood heading over directly with a bloody head hanging on his waist. That face on the bloody head no doubt belonged to the King of Yang. "I came to collect the cold moon saber and sanguine crystal bow," the visitor said in a deep voice. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion trembled all over and sobered up instantly. Swallowing his saliva, he nodded and said, "Okay, I will get them." After a few moments, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion brought the cold moon saber and Sky Treasure Pavilion to Suzimo. These two pseudo-spirit weapons were too heavy. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion had to use spirit chi to control them and could barely bring them over. "Thank you so much." The visitor hung the cold moon saber on his waist. Fastening the quiver on his back and holding the sanguine crystal bow with his hands, he turned and left. It was only until the visitor disappeared did the waiting staff at the side heave a long sigh of relief and gradually calmed down. This man is very scary. I even have feelings of fear and trepidation when I stand before him, the waiting staff said. After pausing shortly, he then had a moment of realization before exclaiming in shock, "Don't tell me that he is the one who killed the King of Yang. Who is he? Why did he kill the King of Yang?" The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion had a grave expression. After considering for a long time, he searched out a white paper crane from a storage bag. Releasing some spirit chi from his fingertip, he wrote a line of words: "The King of Yang is already dead. The group is now leaderless and the capital is in chaos. The murderer is not a chi refinement warrior and he has the third princess's Sky Treasure gold badge. His identity is suspicious." After writing out the message, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion walked to the window and sent off the paper crane in his hands gently. The paper crane fluttered its wings and soared into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Chapter 35, Kill One Man in 10 Steps. Chapter 35, Kill One Man in 10 Steps. Dozens of chi refinement warriors gathered in the air, discussing countermeasures and staring at the entrance of Sky Treasure Pavilion at the same time. Soon after, Suzimo stepped out of the Sky Treasure Pavilion with a long saber hung on his waist and a blood-colored huge bow in his hands. "Suzimo, you won't be able to get away. If you surrender, your Su family may still be pardoned. Otherwise, humph, your Su family will definitely be annihilated," one of the perfected chi refinement warriors said worriedly. Within such a short time frame, someone had already told the chi refinement warrior from Joyful Clan about Suzimo's background. "You wish to annihilate the Su family?" Suzimo sneered. The murderous intent in his eyes intensified as he suddenly drew out 3 arrows from his quiver and coldly said, "I will exterminate you first." He bent the bow and narked the arrow. The sanguine crystal bow weighed thousands of pounds. Coupled with the huge tendons of the spirit beast anaconda, the power that it could erupt would weigh at least 10,000s of pound. There were 2 key points in archery. First, the force. Second, the accuracy. The sanguine crystal bow in Suzimo's hands was heavy enough. Although its precision was lacking a little, it did not matter in a situation whereby the dozens of chi refinement warriors were gathered at the same place. Su Zimo did not even have to aim. He just had to shoot towards that crowd of people. Swoosh! Bow like a full moon and arrows like shooting stars. Almost simultaneously, 3 sharp arrows were shot. There was only the sound of them breaking through the air. Poof! 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 Sounds of sharp weapons piercing blood and flesh could be heard. Before they could react, 3 chi refinement warriors were shot by Su Zimo and dropped to the ground. It was too fast. Many chi refinement warriors in the air were caught by surprise. They did not expect that Su Zimo would have a means to deal with them. The expressions of the remaining chi refinement warriors suddenly changed. They hurriedly redirected their flying swords and fled behind Su Zimo to distance themselves from the latter. Terror filled their eyes and fear lingered in their hearts. Given the power and speed of the 3 arrows, even perfected chi refinement warriors would not be able to dodge them. At the sight of this, Su Zimo did not hide the contempt in his eyes. He laughed out loud. With such capabilities, you still wish to stop me. Su Zimo strapped the sanguine crystal bow on his back and unsheathed the cold moon saber with a backhand grip. Thereafter, he dashed towards the outside of the capital. With the cold moon saber by his side, Su Zimo was like a tiger with wings. Although the Imperial Army and guards won in numbers, no one could stop Su Zimo's killing momentum. It was in complete disarray after Su Zimo fought his way through them, leaving behind rows of corpses and blood flowing like rivers. The dozens of chi refinement warriors in mid-air had not given up. They followed Su Zimo from afar, but the spirit weapons under their control no longer posed any threat to Su Zimo. When a flying sword shot over, Su Zimo no longer dodged them. With a wave of his saber, the flying sword would be hurled off. The level 9 and perfected chi refinement warriors could barely control the inferior grade spirit weapons hit by the cold moon saber. However, the other chi refinement warriors did not have such control. Although the cold moon saber was a pseudo-spirit weapon, it was integrated with too many rare spirit items. Its toughness did not lose out to middle-grade spirit weapons. Complemented with Su Zimo's strong and powerful body strength, just one slash from it could dissipate all the spirit chi on the flying sword directly. There would be a massive number of casualties if the spirit weapon that lost control were to hit the crowd of the Imperial Army and city guards. Over time, feelings of fear and terror started to spread between the Imperial Army and the city guards. When one person started to retreat, many people would follow suit subconsciously. The initial unwavering determination of the Imperial Army and guards had finally been crushed. Fear was contagious. The dozens of chi refinement warriors lingered in the air. Their expressions ugly, and they were filled with hesitation. In actual fact, the moment that Su Zimo picked up the sanguine crystal bow, he was already in complete control of the situation. Many chi refinement warriors wanted to dodge the sharp arrows from Su Zimo and had to distance themselves from him as much as possible. When the distance was greater, the power of the sharp arrows would inevitably reduce. The deviation from the target would also increase tremendously to allow more reaction time for the many chi refinement warriors. But at the same time, with the increase in distance, it also meant that they needed to use more spirit chi to control their flying swords and would not be able to hang on for too long. If they were to go closer to Su Zimo and the latter suddenly turned back and shot an arrow, one of the chi refinement warriors would drop from the air. One had to know that the 20 sharp arrows in Su Zimo's quiver were also forged by the remaining materials used for the sanguine crystal bow. It was not any different from pseudo-spirit weapons. Once they were shot, be it at the vital body point or not, it would cause devastating damage to the body of the chi refinement warrior if the powers contained in the sharp arrow suddenly erupted. If they were shot in the arm would become paralyzed. If they were shot in the thigh would become fractured. If they were shot in the body would explode after the sharp arrow pierced through it. At the sight of Su Zimo on the brink of fighting his way out of the capital, many chi refinement warriors felt extremely helpless. They were torn between advancing or retreating. At the gate of the city, many guards stationed at the site had long closed the gate. 10 monstrous-sized ballistae for defending the city walls were placed in a row at the gate. The ballistic arrows were thicker and longer than the spears in the hands of the guards. The arrowheads were shining with sinister and cold lights, aiming at Suzimo and ready to be launched at any point in time. Suzimo's killing momentum was on the rise. Seeing that the city gate was right in front of him, he did not care about the ballisti. He held the cold moon saber and charged forward. Release. The leader of the guards standing beside the ballisti lowered his arms and yelled. Swash. 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 10 huge arrows shot out, tearing the air instantly and making terrifying sounds. How powerful was the ballistic arrows? The arrows shot out could even destroy the city walls. However, now, all 10 ballistic arrows were only targeting a single living person made of flesh and blood. The ballistic arrows had not been used to attack a city but to kill a human instead. This kind of situation was unprecedented in history. It was also a rare sight in the future. The ballistic arrows traveled at lightning speed and Suzimo was still charging. In a split second, the ballistic arrows had already appeared in front of Suzimo. The 10 ballistic arrows came together like a huge stone pillar smashing over. The aura was appalling. Ha! Suzimo's eyes shone as he exhaled and yelled while gripping the cold moon saber. Faint sounds of vibration emanated from the bones in his body. His large tendons pulsated and sounds of bowstring vibrations rang. The muscles in his body knotted together, seemingly doubling his body size. Break it! Suzimo raised his saber and slashed the 10 ballistic arrows with all his might. Bang! Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, sparks flew as the 10 ballistic arrows actually broke in half and scattered all over the ground by the cold moon saber in Suzimo's hand. Pest! When everyone in the capital witnessed this scene, their pupils instantly contracted into needle heads as they gasped. Even this could not hurt him? How could this be the power of a human? Although Suzimo had blocked the 10 ballistic arrows, he had also taken a half-step back due to the impact of this force. He flung his slightly sore arms and grinned at the numerous guards at the city gate. All of you are finished. The guards at the city gate were so frightened that all colors drained from their faces. The power of the ballisti were great, but loading the bow needed 10 people to pull the string and 3 people to carry the arrow over to reload it. During this time, Suzimo had already dashed before them, not giving them any chance at all. Poof! 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 Flashes of blood appeared consecutively. No one could stop the powers of Suzimo's slash. What postnatal experts, perfected carnate expert. After Suzimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, these pugilistic experts were as useless as chickens and dog. This was the power of cultivation. Once he stepped into the cultivation world, Suzimo did not even need to bother about using conspiracy or endure for 16 years to plot an assassination. Let me tell you openly that I want to kill you, and you cannot escape either. Even the tightly guarded capital with chi refinement warriors could not stop me. In the blink of an eye, one after another, the guards at the city gate were fleeing desperately. Seeing that he had hopes of leaving the city, Suzimo was instantly invigorated. He could not help lamenting, with every 10 steps a man is killed, leaving no trails in 1,000 miles, left in anguish after the matter, hiding one's light under a bushel. Ha 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 ha, the capital of the country of Yang is only as such. Suzimo's laughter filled the sky, displaying extreme arrogance. Chapter 36, The Enemy's Arrival at the City Gate. Chapter 36, The Enemy's Arrival at the City Gate. At the foot of the city gate, the leader of the guards was alone and holding a steel saber. Although he could not hide the endless terror in his eyes, and the arm holding the saber was trembling slightly, he did not move half a step back. When the Imperial Army and guards dared not step forward, when they were fleeing everywhere, he stood his ground and guarded the city gate. Neither did he once leave or waver. His name was Guo Lian and guarding the city gate was his responsibility. He would not cower as long as he was alive. Come on, step over my dead body, Guo Lian glared and shouted hysterically. He was using this kind of method to vent the fears in his heart. Swoosh! A strong stench of blood hit his face. Suzimo was already in front of him. After getting a clear glimpse of Su Zimo's face, Guo Lian's jaws dropped slightly. There was a flash of surprise followed by endless regret in his eyes. Earlier on, Su Zimo was covered in blood in the crowd. Even his face was splashed with many drops of blood. He looked like a slayer that had just stepped out from hell. Hence, Guo Lian could not recognize Su Zimo. It was only when the two faced each other did Guo Lian vaguely recall that he was the one who let this person into the city, that green-robed scholar with delicate features and carrying a bow and saber, who was mocked ruthlessly by his underling. At the same time, Su Zimo also recognized this man. The cold moon saber that had just landed on the top of Guo Lian's head moved away suddenly. Without halting his steps, Su Zimo brushed shoulders with this man and said softly, "You are the one who let me into the city. I will spare your life." Having encountered a close brush with death, Guo Lian felt drained of energy. He collapsed onto the ground, kneeling, panting heavily and drenched in his own sweat. Guo Lian's mind were resonating with Su Zimo's words. He could not help muttering softly, if I had not let him enter the city, given his powers, could he not fight his way in? Perhaps this is karma. Guo Lian could not resist the urge to look back. In the next moment, an even more appalling and terrifying matter happened. Boom! A deafening noise. The tall, wide and sturdy gate of the city had actually fallen apart under the impact of Su Zimo's collision. Su Zimo left the capital like a ghost, his feet barely touching the ground. In the blink of an eye, the capital of the country of Yang was far behind him. Dozens of Qi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan followed, chased him out of the capital. Looking at the diminishing view of Su Zimo, they did not choose to pursue him any further. On the one hand, they had almost used up all of their spirit Qi when they fought with Su Zimo in the air earlier. On the other, these Qi refinement warriors could tell that their speed was no match for Su Zimo even if they were in their best condition. How exactly did this person train his body till this extent? Someone could not help asking. The shock and terror in his eyes had not gone away. A person beside him said, "I heard from the clan master that some top clans have geniuses with heaven spirit root who can cultivate at a faster rate. Coupled with sufficient resources from the clan, before core formation, they would integrate spirit Qi into their body to temper their flesh, blood and veins, refining both Qi and body simultaneously. However, this person is clearly not a Qi refinement warrior. The body of that kind of cultivator is indeed stronger than us, but they are far from reaching this stage. The body of this person is even more terrifying than spirit beast. Don't feel discouraged. When the clan masters rush over, we will kill him together. I just found out that the Su family has been hiding in Pingyang town all these years. They are all mortals and can't run too far away. Yes, when the time comes, we will annihilate the entire Su family, not even sparing the fowls and dogs to vent all our hatred. On the 7th day of the King of Yang's death. In Kanglang City, a pigeon carrying a message fluttered its wings and flew into the residence of the city lord. It took about 7 days to send a pigeon from the capital of country of Yang to Kanglang City. Soon after, an order was passed down from the residence of the city lord. Pass down orders to the entire army. Prepare to attack the country of Yang. Luo Tianwu wore a golden armor with a long saber hung on his waist. He strode out of the residence of the city lord in a dignified manner, as if he was the ruler of a country. Looking far in the direction of the country of Yang, he could not help smiling. I didn't expect Su Zimo to really kill the king of Yang. This is heaven's will. Heaven wants me, Luo Tianwu, to become the king. This is where the events are leading to. Who else can stop me? Congratulations, Your Highness. The grey-robed old elder standing beside Luo Tianwu said smilingly, Su Zimo is quite smart, but he still fell into Your Highness's scheme of killing with a borrowed knife. After murdering the king of Yang, he will also die in the capital of the country of Yang. Ha ha ha. Luo Tianwu laughed complacently. This is an open scheme. Su Zimo knows that I am making use of him, but he still fell into the trap and helped me kill the king of Yang. Su Zimo, haha. He is just an ordinary man without any major use. He has wasted his time studying for more than 10 years. Mister, don't worry. When I become the king, I will definitely confer you the title of the country's advisor. Luo Tianwu said in a deep voice. The grey-robed elder bowed slightly, cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, Your Highness." Luo Tianwu waved his arms and said loudly, "Let's go. Follow me into battle." Success and dominance is happening right at this moment. Luo Tianwu had long waited for this day. The troops in the city sharpened their swords and were long prepared. Within 15 minutes, 50,000 soldiers and horses led respectively by the 5 wolf guards of Kanglang City had already gathered. The army left the city, detoured Kanglang mountain range and entered the borders of the country of Yang. The nearest city to the borders was Jianan City in the country of Yang. In a deserted village not far away from Jianan City, not a soul could be seen. This place was termed as the Ghost Village. The Su family had moved to this place more than 10 days ago. None of them were residing in Pingyang town anymore. These days, using elixirs refined by Song Qi to nurse his health, Su Hong's body gradually showed signs of improvement. He had recovered much. However, as predicted by Uncle Zheng, it was easy to heal the body but difficult to heal the heart. Su Hong was still bedridden and had lost his appetite for food. His eyes were empty and soulless. Each time he thought about the Su family losing all hopes of avenging the blood feud, his heart ached unbearably. Uncle Zhang and the rest were also at a loss over what to do. Looking at Su Hong recovering physically but becoming more dispirited as the days passed, everyone in the Su family mourned and sighed. On this day, Liu Yu, the head guard of the Su family, suddenly rushed into the courtyard with a complicated expression mixed with sadness and joy. He said loudly, "Mr. Zheng, something serious has happened." "What is the matter?" Uncle Zheng's heart sank. Liu Yu said, "Luo Tianwu and his 5 wolf guards are leading an army of 50,000 to attack Jianan City. They have already arrived at the foot of the city gate." Uncle Zheng drew his brows together and said in puzzlement, "Luo Tianwu has been plotting for a long time. But why did he suddenly send out his troops? There must be some reason. Otherwise, he won't act rashly. Mister's conjecture is correct." Liu Yu nodded and said, "According to the information from the spy, Luo Tianwu claimed that the king of Yang is already dead and the country of Yang is in great chaos. It is just that the news has not spread outside the capital. As long as the city lord of Jianan City surrenders, he will be conferred the post of premier or other additional titles." Uncle Zheng frowned, carrying a grave expression. He pondered deeply and said, "Since Luo Tianwu has already sent his troops, this news is very likely true. However, the king of Yang had the protection of dozens of Qi refinement warriors. How did he die so easily? Who killed the king of Yang?" Suddenly, Uncle Zheng seemed to have thought of something. He exclaimed in shock, "Second young master. Where did second young master go recently? Did anyone see him?" Liu Yu shook his head and said, "Second young master is indeed very powerful, but I don't think he will be able to sneak into the capital and kill the king of Yang before the eyes of dozens of Qi refinement warriors." Uncle Zheng let out a long sigh. He gradually calmed down before nodding and saying, "That's also true." After hesitating for a moment, Song Qi, who was beside them, could not help saying, "But, I am afraid that your family's second young master might really be the one who killed the king of Yang." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.